structure of personality characteristics, and the comparability of ethic personality taxonomy. Without further ado, I hand over the screen to Dr. Jusmawati.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Aini Mazlina, for the introduction. So I am resuming the lecture for this week. I think this is the third week. I am resuming the lecture from my colleagues previously, Madam Nurul Izzati Ashikin Zulkifli. So I think a bit of a recap. Before that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all participants. Thank you so much for the time that you spend to go through with this program, short course program, Introduction to Social Sciences, Human Sciences. So Assalamualaikum to all and welcome to the class. So I will be resuming this session on the topic of science of the soul. Okay, let me share the... Okay, so can it be seen? The slides? Okay. Okay, so I will resume what my colleagues presented before, and as a recap, my colleagues presented on the fact that we are offering an alternative perspective on understanding about human being. So I think she defined, she gives the definition. She gave the definition of psychology at the very beginning, when psychology is being defined as the knowledge of soul, and then it shifted into the knowledge of mind, and then it shifted into the contemporary definition of psychology, which is the study of human behavior and mental processes. Right, so from this shift, we can clearly see that the focus of the discipline of psychology from the very beginning has shifted into into the study of human behavior and mental processes. So when the definition shifted from the study or information or knowledge about the soul, shifted to the study of human behavior and mental processes, so it seems to be that certain important or pertinent parts of the human being is being left out. So as of now, we are looking into the Quranic perspective of human being, right? Quranic perspective of human being, and the topic that I will be delivering is the nature of man, or who is man. So this is the effort of the Department of Psychology to uphold the perspective, the Quranic perspective. All right, we are looking into the Quranic fresh perspective of the Quran to understand who is man. Okay, so we term a specific course is being introduced in the undergraduate curriculum of the department, Science of the Soul. This Science of the Soul is a direct translation from the Arabic terminology of al-Mannas. Okay, so that is the situation as of now, and then we will look into the conception of who is man. So what I will be presenting after this are Quranic verses that highlight the very nature of man, and then further explication on the very nature of man will be deliberated. Okay, so based on the chapter 76, ayah 1 to 3. Okay, ayah 1 to 3. Okay, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hal ata 'ala al-insani hinun min ad-dahr lam yakun shay'an madhkura. Suratul Insan. This is the translation, and then there will be a deliberation on the translation and on the meaning. Is there not a period of time when each human is nothing yet worth mentioning? So this is giving us some kind of understanding, all right, that Allah brought man into the existence after he was not even a thing worth mentioning. So this is to describe the lowliness level of man, and as well as the weaknesses. So this is actually at the very beginning. This is how human being is being created. There was a time before coming into the world that man was a non-existent being, although we are known to God. Right. The next verse is Inna khalaqnal insana min nutfatin amshajin nabtalihi faja'alnahu sami'an basira. So for indeed we alone created humans from a drop of mixed fluid in order to test them, so we made them hear and see. So it seems to be that this is the material aspects of man, whereby we are created in this manner and then we are made to be able to hear and see. So this shows the capacity of man, what we are able to do. Alright, so this is like more explanation, the mixture of male and female gametes which form the zygote after fertilization. So we gave him the faculties of hearing and sight, so that he would be able to use them for obedience and disobedience. Okay, so the faculties of hearing and sight is being given to us. And then with that faculty somehow, so we will be tested to see whether or not we will be able to obey or we disobey, right, the rulings that Allah have given to us. So this is practically the description. Right, the next, the last one, Inna hadaynahu sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafura. We already showed them the way, whether they choose to be grateful or ungrateful. So meaning that Allah had explained to us, made it clear to us, and showed to us this is some kind of a decree, right? A decree. And it depends on men on whether they want to be happy, right? They want to state their be thankful, or whether or not they want to be ungrateful. So practically it gives us some kind of understanding of the nature of man. There are choices that we can make, right, with the capacity being given to us. There are choices that we are able to make, right? But then the choices is given after we have been given certain capacities. Okay, so that is one of the description given by Allah in the Quranic verses with regards to man, the nature of man. And then if we look into chapter 32, verse 7 until 9, so this further deliberate the very nature of man, right, when the word tin is being used. Allazi ahsana kulla shay'in khalqa wa bada'a khalqal insana min tin. Right, so the definition, the translation of the word tin is clay, who has perfected everything he created, and he originated the creation of humankind from clay. So the further deliberation of this ayah or verse, he created the father of mankind, Adam, from clay. So that is the starting point of the creation of mankind. So this should be our understanding. Right, and then the next verse, it is mentioned, Summa ja'ala naslahu min sulalatin min ma'in mahid. Then he made his offspring from semen of despised water. So the deliberation of this ayah, reproduction of human being will happen in this fashion, right? From a nutfah which comes from the loins of men and from between the ribs of women. Right, so starting point, the creation of man from clay, but the reproduction happens in this manner. Right, and then there are a couple of words that we can pay attention to in the next verse. ثُمَّ سَوَّاهُ وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. Let's look at the translation first. Then he fashioned him in due proportion. Alright, thumma sawahu, he fashioned him in due proportion, means when he created Adam from clay, he created him and gave him shape and made him upright. And then the next sentence, وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ, and breathed into him the soul. The word ruh here is translated into the word soul. And he gave you hearing, sight, and the sense of deduction. وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ, and he made you to have a sam'a, hearing, al-absar, sight, wal-af'idah, the sense of deduction. Al-af'idah literally is translated into heart, fu'ad. Right, so here it gives us a connotation that the sense of deduction, sense of reasoning, right, sense of reasoning is connected to the word heart, not the word brain. Okay, so that is the situation by which human being is being created. Okay, so here وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ, he gave you hearing, sight, and the sense of deduction, meaning that the sense of deduction here means reasoning, enabling men to draw some valid inferences. So we are given the capacity to reason, based on the hearing capacity, observing capacity, we will be able to do reasoning. So practically these are the characteristics of man, how we are being created. Alright, and then the last one, قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ, little is the thanks you give, means for this strength with which Allah has provided you, the one who is truly blessed is the one who uses them to worship and obey his Lord. May he be exalted with and glorified. Okay, so again, the verse stated some kind of choices being given. Right, some kind of choices being given. The starting point of the creation of man from thin, and then the process of reproduction of man, and then the fact that man is being created in a complete form, right? In a complete form, that is these spiritual substances being given, right? Being bestowed upon man. وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ. And then there is also capacity, certain types of capacity based on our sensory organs. We listen, we see, right? And we are able to use the sense of reasoning, right? The sense of reasoning. With these capacity, still there are alternative or opportunities being given, whether we want to obey, whether we want to disobey, whether we want to worship Allah or we go astray. Right, so these are the situation described of man. Right, so practically I'm referring the content of these slides. I'm referring to a couple of references written by a prolific professor, Professor Syed Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas. This is the summarization of his book, what he is trying to deliver about the very nature of man. So, with regards to the Quranic verses being presented just now, this is the summarization of the very nature of man. So, it seems to be that when man is being described as being made from clay initially, so that is a material context of man. When Allah breathed His ruh into man, there is also an immaterial aspect of man. Okay, so recapping on the day whereby we have Professor Dr. Omar Hassan Kasuli describing about psychology. He mentioned about the dual entity or dual nature of man. Alright, so this is the summarization of the very nature of man. Man is a single entity with a dual nature who is at once both physical and spiritual. Right, so that is the summary of the very nature of man. If we look into the Western perspective of man, they tend to focus, or they tend to put the perspective of man only on the physical side. They disregard the spiritual aspects of man. That is why the Western perspective is incomplete in a sense. Although they are trying to look into the inner side of man, for example, the newest approach of perspective in psychology, the positive psychology perspective, for example, is trying to look into the positive aspects of man. But they still lack the complete or comprehensive spirituality nature of man. Okay, so this is how we look into man, and this is how we should understand man. So it is a single entity, but with a dual nature, which is at once both physical and spiritual. So in other words, we are of a physical or material entity. We are also non-physical or immaterial entity. Right. So these two entities will be integrating themselves to produce who we are, a complete man. Right. So the integration of these two entities will build a third entity, a complete man. In psychology, there is a school of thoughts known as Gestalt psychology, G-E-S-T-A-L-T, Gestalt psychology. So Gestalt psychology has a paradigm, and the paradigm is stated in this statement: the whole is not equal to the sum of parts. Meaning that the parts is there, they will be retaining their nature, their exact nature, but then when they combine together, they produce another comprehensive entity. So that is how man is being described. Man is actually the integration of the two entities, both the material or physical and the non-physical or the immaterial entity, but we are a complete, unique human being at the very end, right? Because of the integration of the two entities, physical, material, and the non-physical, immaterial entity. So this is how we should understand man. Right, and this is what is lacking in the contemporary mainstream psychology. Okay, just to strengthen our understanding of the nature of man, so this is actually more complete. Chapter 23, verse 12 until 14. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر. Right, so the word فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. So the word that I want to stress here is this word خَلْقًا آخر. So this is to certify the fact that man is the combination of both the material and immaterial thing. But the integration of both the material and immaterial thing create us a complete and a very complete man, right? The man, the we that we are assuming ourselves as now. Alright, so this is the translation, and indeed we created humankind from an extract of clay, then placed each human as a sperm drop in a secure place, then we developed the drop into a clinging clot, then developed the clot into a lump of flesh, then developed the lump into bones, then clothed the bones with flesh, then we brought it into being as a new creation. خَلْقًا آخر. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. Okay, so this is the summary. Individual souls becomes, I can't see actually. Okay, so this is the summary from all the verses that I presented before. So individual souls become associated with individual bodies in the wombs of their mothers. So at the very beginning, we exist in the form of spiritual entity, the soul itself. And then when we are placed into our mother's womb, somehow we associate, the individual souls become associated with individual bodies in the wombs of their mothers. And then they merge into a single being as a new creation. Right? So man has to be understood as neither soul nor body, nor is he a composite of the two. So man is a third entity constituted out of the two. Okay, so that is the conclusion, or that is the summarization of a man. Okay, I usually use this example, or it can be other example. Say for example, we take, this is actually an example that I use. So this is the material being an egg, alright, material, the shell itself. We can touch it. It comes in the form of concrete, right? Concrete entity. So inside the shell, what we have, the albumin, the white egg, the egg white, and then the yolk. Right. So this is actually the starting point of the material entity, and then if it is incubated somehow, this is actually the entity out of this combination. Right, out of this combination. Or we can use other example. For example, if we look at water, for example, water, it's at the basis of its atom base build. For example, what does water consist of? Hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen has its own nature. They are actually flammable. Right? They are actually flammable. So that is the very nature when they exist on their own. Hydrogen and oxygen, they are flammable. But then when they are combined into two and integrated, consolidated, what appears is water. Right? What appears is water, and a new creation out of the original entity. Right? So that's how we should look into man and the conception of man as the third new creation, khalaqan akhar, the new creation, the third entity, a complete being. Okay, there is also this description of man. Man is being described as rational animal. Alright, so the Arabic term for rational animal is hayawanun natiq. Alright, so we will delve into this explanation now. So the word rational here, the Arabic word is natiq. It comes from the root word of nataqa. Nataqa is articulated speech. Right, so man is being given this capacity, alright, this capacity of using speech. Alright, so with regards to animal, alright, animal, the word is hayawan, animal. But I would rather we not understood it from that perspective of animal as animal. So the root word is hay, an organized being infused with a vital spirit, right? So just to differentiate, man not as animal or beast. So we consider man is not an animal, but rather a living being. Okay, so in conclusion, hayawanun natiq is translated into the living being that speaks, right? The living being that speaks. When we talk about the living being that speaks, given the capacity to articulate speech, it gives a connection to the fact that man has cognitive faculty, right? Man has cognitive faculty. So speech issues forth from the word nataqa, nutq, the root of language inherent in cognitive faculty of the soul. When we talk about using language, articulated speech, the capability of us using language, when we have the capability of using language, so it gives us a connection that there is indeed a cognitive faculty of our being, of our soul. We have cognitive faculty. Alright, so the soul is then described as nafsun natiqah, the word nafs, right, labeled as the articulate soul. Right, so this is how we look into man when we use the word hayawanun natiq as in explaining who is man. I would rather use the word nafsun natiqah. Okay, and then we look into chapter 7, verse 172. There are lots of things going on in this verse actually. We'll look into the Arabic version first. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ زُحُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا أَنْ تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. Okay, so this is the translation. And recall, O Prophet, when your Lord brought forth descendants from the loins of the sons of Adam and made them witnesses against their own self, asking them, am I not the Lord? They said, yes, we do testify. We did so lest we claim on the day of resurrection. We were unaware of this. Right. So this ayah is giving us some kind of understanding that there is a covenant. Sometimes this ayah this verse is known as the covenant of Alastu. Right? The covenant of Alastu. Alastu bi rabbikum qalu bala shahidina. The question that Allah posed on us, am I not your Lord? They say, yes, we do testify. Bala shahidina. Right? So the footnote here is the explanation of the verse. So the preceding verse actually, there is another verse before this, which is verse 171. Allah described about a covenant between Him with the Bani Israel, right? Bani Israel. But 172 is a covenant being made by Allah with Bani Adam. So it is the preceding discourse concluded with the note that God made the Israelites enter into a covenant with their Lord. In the following passage, all men are told that a covenant with God is not the exclusive privilege of the Israel. In fact, all human beings are bound in covenant with God, and a day will come when they will make to answer how well they were able to observe the covenant. So this is another nature of man being stressed by Allah. We are in covenant with Him. Right? We are in covenant with Him, and our covenant will be all the time subscribing to the fact that we are being created by Allah. So that is our very nature, right? So we will have a intermittent covenant being described at the very beginning before we are even born into the world. We exist in the form of soul. Right? We are alam arwah. We exist in form of soul. We made a covenant, agreeing with our God with Allah that we are supposed to be born into the world. But now, when we are already have the capacity, we have our body, material body as our vehicle, again, another covenant is being created so that we remember, right? So that is another nature of man. At all time, our very nature has to be connected with our Creator, right? So that is another nature of man. So at the very beginning, we discussed about the build-up of man. We are built up of the material entity. We are also built up of the immaterial entity. And these two entities combine together to create a complete us, a complete me, and a complete you. Right? And then the very nature of man, we are always in covenant with Allah. Right? This is a remembrance given to us that whatever that is that we do, whatever it is, the way we think, the way we behave, has to be aligned with the fact that at the end of the day, we subscribe to the principles given to us by Allah. So that is our very nature. It is our fitrah. Okay, there are lots of things here actually. A description or more deliberation, right? More deliberation of this verse, right? Of this verse. The thing that I want to point out here is, from this ayah, we should understand it in a way that we are endowed with both existence and consciousness. Based on our own existence, the material entity that we have in us, alright, the immaterial entity that we have in us, the consciousness, we realize, we are alert, we are aware of things that happen around us, right? So when we were both endowed, with both existence and consciousness, what shall we do? We have to become the witness to Allah's Lordship. That is the very nature. Okay? Alright. And then we are granted human form. And we are given the faculty of speech, right? Based on this capacity, we are made to enter into a covenant, right? Into a covenant, and then we are made to witness against ourselves. So this is the very nature. So when we look into this realm of Quranic verse, so we know that there are certain amana given to us, certain responsibilities that we have to fulfill after we are created in the exact form of who we are now, right? So we have to understand the fact that our existence, we have the consciousness that should be used in order for us to become a witness to Allah's Lordship. Okay, so that is again the very nature of man. Okay, now conclusion. The soul definitely knows its Lord, right? So from the previous verses that we have read, so we should understand that it's fitrah in us. Our soul has to know Allah, the Creator. The soul knows itself as His creatures, right? We should know that Allah is our Creator and we are His creatures, right? So with that understanding, so there will come in the fact that we have to be witness to our own self. We have to feel certain responsibilities. Our act, our action, the build-up of our personality has to be tied at the end of the day. What can be done as Muslim, as abid to our Creator. Our soul also knows the other soul as distinct from itself, right? So that is another thing. We realize about who we are. Right? We realize about who we are. We know that we are distinct from other creation. And the soul, with the capacity being given, the capacity of listening, the capacity of observing, seeing things, using our sensory organs, for example. So our soul will know how to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. We are able to discriminate and we are able to make distinction. So these are all the capacities. And also the soul possesses power to apprehend what knowledge communicates. So anything, any information that comes to us, for example, with the faculty that we have, the fact that we can listen, the fact that we can see, the fact that we can comprehend things cognitively, we are able to use language, articulated speech capacity, so we will be able to comprehend what knowledge communicates. Alright, so the soul is also able to communicate what it apprehends because of our capacity being an articulated speech entity, having the faculty of articulated speech. Right, so man is the living being who speaks with soul that has cognitive and articulate power. Okay. So how can the cognitive and articulate power of the soul apprehends the meaning of the universals, the meaning of things around us, the meaning of us ourselves? Alright, this is what we do by involving in the act of judgment and discrimination, distinction and clarification. So this is what known as the faculty of our rationality. Okay, so please, while I am presenting, if you have questions, you definitely can ask me right up. And then still conclusion, right? Because we have the we have to exercise the cognitive power and the articulate power with justice. When we are given certain capacity, we are given the capacity to see, to observe. We are given the capacity to do reasoning, right? Indicative of the fact that we have cognitive power. Right, so we have to exercise the cognitive power and the articulate power with justice. Alright, so Allah does not left us as that. I give you the capacity, therefore you just do whatever you do. No, Allah teaches us a lot more. Right, Allah teaches man the science of al-bayan. Right, what is the science of al-bayan or al-bayan? So the art or science of eloquence. Right, is the way we express meaning with different words and methods. We have this capacity. Allah teach us this the art or science of eloquence. So when we talk about this ilmu bayan, the art or science of eloquence, how we express meaning, right? We express meaning using different words and different methods. People use different words, people use different methods in order for them to deliver what they want to, the ideas, the notion, the expression or the perception they have in them. Alright. So this capacity of expression of the unseen inner reality, this capacity is the expression of the unseen inner reality known as akal. Right? Known as akal. Okay, so what is akal? We define it as intellect. Right? It is an act of grasping, withholding, or binding objects of knowledge by means of words and identifies their meaning and proper places in a systems of relation. So that is the akal. Alright, so it is a capacity, this capacity is the expression of the unseen inner reality known as akal. Okay, now I'm going to shift into this. Right, so if you look into the description of man, in the Quranic verses, there are a couple of terms being used. Akal, ruh, nafs, and qalb. Okay, so now we are looking into the very nature of these four entities. So these are the faculties that we have as a human being, as a complete human being created by Allah. So we have all of these entities in us. We have the entity of akal, we have the capacity, we have the entity of ruh, we have the entity of nafs and qalb. Literally, the translation of akal is intellect. Right? Ruh is considered as the spirit, nafs is the soul, and heart is the qalb. Alright. Looking into all these four entities, they can be categorized as either spiritual substance or they are the entity that is associated with the governance of the physical nature of man. Okay, so they are a spiritual substance. Let's look into the akal. Akal is considered a spiritual substance. Ruh, definitely the spirit of man, spiritual substance. Nafs is also a spiritual substance, and qalb is both spiritual and material substance. Because of what? Material substance, qalb refer to an organ. It is actually an organ, a physical organ that regulates the circulation of blood throughout the body. Right, so meaning that qalb is also considered as spiritual. It has this division of spiritual nature in the qalb. Alright, and it is also a material substance. So all four entities that we have, qalb, nafs, ruh, aql, we have these four entities has its own spiritual substances, and also it is associated with the governance of the physical nature of man. Okay, now let's look into, just now I described about qalb. It is a spiritual substance that is a spiritual entity establishment of the qalb, and qalb is also a material substance. Alright, it is an organ that regulates the circulation of blood throughout the body. Okay, now when we look into aql, it is a spiritual substance. In terms of physical nature, how aql is connected to the governance of the physical nature of man. So it is the reasoning power of mind associated with the brain. That is how we look into the aql, the entity of aql, and how it governs the physical nature of man. So it is the reasoning power of the mind associated with the brain. The physical structure is the brain, right? But the reasoning power of the mind is that of aql. Alright, it is associated with the brain. As for the ruh, right? So the ruh is actually the spirit of man. So this entity of ruh carries the amana, the trust of the vicegerency. At the end of the day, we should understand that we are the khalifa, right? In this world, we are abid to our creator. So in terms of spiritual, in terms of its spiritual rule over the body, it is known as nafs, or the soul of man. As an organ of spiritual perception, it is called the qalb. As cognitive and articulate power, it is called an aql. Right? How is it associated with the governance of the physical nature of man? It is the generator of biological life. Without ruh, we are no longer living. Okay, so that's how we should look into this entity: aql, ruh, nafs, and qalb. Each of these entities is indeed spiritual substances, but they also have association with the governance of physical nature of man. Okay. So here, the ruh has many identified characteristics and its many modes in relations with the various levels of existence, with the spiritual, both spiritual and physical. The ruh is always in act, engaged at once in its many modes, right? Just like what I mentioned here. Ruh, in terms of its spiritual rule over the body, it is known as nafs, the individual man, or the soul of a man. Ruh is as an organ of spiritual perception, it is called the qalb. As cognitive and articulate power, it is called an aql. Right, so that's how we should understand these four entities. Nafs, qalb, and aql are not mere names signifying different modes of the ruh, but they have having no reality of their own. The difference in the meaning of their names indicates their specific and individual realities. They are powers and faculties of the ruh. They are the attributes in relation to the essence. Okay? Alright. So here, I want to bring your attention to the word term Insan and Bashar. Right? Insan and Bashar. Okay, I have 1 more minute. So Insan, this is what known as Insan, the complete man. Right? The I, the me, and the you. So this is khalqan akhar. We can divide it into, in other words, we can divide it into 2. Nafsun natiqa, man's spiritual agent, the rational soul, the real agent of man's moral and ethical acts and behavior, operating through its cognitive and active powers in the insaniya aspects of man. So now the word insan can be referred to as representing nafsun natiqa. Whereas another division, nafsul hayawaniya, the physical vital soul, man's biological nature, his physical life, shape and construction, his bodily origin. This is what known as Bashar. Right, so Nafsul Hayawaniyah, the other term is, we can refer it to Bashar, Nafsul Natiqa, Insan. Okay. Last bit. What I want to direct your attention is that contemporarily, right, this is not something new. Man is being described as in the category of Homo, H-O-M-O. Right, so we have Homo economicus, Homo legalis, Homo sapiens. Right, but I would like to direct your attention into understanding man as not within the classification of Homo. We would rather see man as classified as the Quranic Adam. Okay, so now the issue is the word Adam, the name Adam. People claim that it is not a proper name, but a general name for mankind, kind of a prototype of man. So they use the word Adam to refer to prototype of man. But if they use the word Adam to refer to prototype of man, so the issue is that what is the initial point of the beginning of the mankind? Alright, we want to look into man as the Quranic Adam. Alright, Quranic Adam. We are not into the categorization of the Homo classification of man. Alright, Homo classification of man is a theory of evolution of man. Man evolved, right? Man evolved from one particular shape into another shape via the natural selection scheme. Right, so we don't want to have that kind of conception. Man is Adam is a proper name, the starting point of the mankind. Right, it is not a name that should be used to refer to mankind in general. It is not a name that refers to a prototype of man. Right, so we should be subscribing to the context of Quranic Adam. Adam is a real man, a name being given to our Prophet Adam at the very beginning. So we do not subscribe ourselves to the theory of evolution of man, that the Homo sapien categorization of man. Okay. Alright, so I think that's it. I've exceeded the time, 2 minutes. Thank you so much for your attention to this lecture. So I hope you can get some kind of benefit in understanding a much more detailed perspective of man, overcoming, not subscribing to that many instances of man as what the mainstream discipline is talking about. Okay, thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Jusmawati, for an interesting sharing about the soul, an Islamic perspective of psychology. Okay, we've received several questions here, but since we don't have much time left, because we supposed to have our second topic to be delivered by Dr. Harmi soon, yeah. But I'll just take one question here for Dr. Jusmawati to answer, yeah, and the rest perhaps Dr. Jusmawati may just reply to the chat box perhaps, yeah. So I'll just take the first question asked by the participant. This is from Habibullah. Is animal also not created from soul and material? So what is the difference between men and animals? The difference between men and animals, based on this definition.
Okay. The difference rests on the capacity or faculty given to man. Faculty given to man, the faculty of reasoning. Alright, the faculty of reasoning. The faculty of reasoning differentiates us from any other living being. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jusmawati. So the rest, maybe you may want to reply the questions at the chat box.
I will.
Okay, thank you. Now we have our second speaker, from psychology. Now we move to communication. To, Dr. Harmi Taazim, who will be with us, inshallah, to talk about, sorry, I just checked the topic will be on professional media practices and ethics in broadcast journalism. So first of all, let me just introduce you to our course instructor, our speaker, the second speaker today, Dr. Harmi Taazim, Dr. Harmi Taazim Muhammad is an assistant professor at the Department of Communication, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Semi-Arid Knowledge and Human Sciences, AHAS IKHS, International Islamic University Malaysia. He is an esteemed academic media profession and media professional with significant experience in sports broadcasting and media production. He earned his Bachelor of Human Sciences in English Language and Literature from the International Islamic University Malaysia in 1995. He began his career in 1996 as a sports broadcast journalist with TV3, quickly advancing to a sports newsreader for Bulletin Utama and later taking on roles as a host and commentator for various sports programs. He's very active, as a commentator in a sports program. His work in the field was recognized with the prestigious British Chevening Award, allowing him to complete a master's degree in media production at Birmingham City University in the UK in 2001. Since 2003, Dr. Harmi has worked as a freelance broadcaster with Radio Television Malaysia, RTM, hosting and commentating on major international sporting events, including the Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, and SEA Games events, including the Olympic Games, SEA Games. In 2015, he expanded his broadcasting career by joining Fox Sports Asia, providing commentary for FIA Formula One, MotoGP, and so on and so forth. In 2019, Dr. Harmi joined IUM as a lecturer, completing his PhD in Mass Communication at UiTM in 2016. His research focuses on television news, editorial practices, and media commercialization. He has served as the Director of the Office for Communication, Advocacy and Promotion at International Islamic University Malaysia, and is currently an Assistant Professor in the Department of Communication at the Kuliah of Semi-Arid Knowledge and Human Sciences at AHAS IKHS. So his contributions to sports broadcasting, media production, and academic research are well recognized and reflect his dedication to both industries. So without further ado, I now invite Dr. Harmi. Are you here, Dr. Harmi? You're already with us, right? So will you be able to share your slides? So the screen is yours, Dr. Harmi. Is Dr. Harmi with us or not?
Yeah, Doctor. Just now he entered already, Doctor. Let me check again.
I think Dr. Harmi unmute. You are mute, Dr. Harmi?
Yeah. Okay. Let me unmute.
Okay. Now I can unmute. Okay. Now, yes. But I cannot share the screen. Sorry. Yeah.
Sister Jara, can we allow Dr. Harmi to share his screen, please?
Yeah, sure. He already can. Try again, Doctor.
No. All disabled participant screen sharing now.
Okay.
Can you share? Maybe you can share your slides with
Yes, sure. Again, try again, Doctor.
Okay. Now I can. Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay. Can everyone see the slides?
You can not yet. We could see before. We may try again. Yes. Okay. It works now. Yes. Right, you may start, Dr. Harmi.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everyone. Okay. Then I will share some lecture and thought on professional in media practice and ethics in broadcast journalism. As this is a topic that very close to my heart, and not only I am currently teaching the subject at the university, but as a broadcast journalist myself, I had the experience of working and fulfilling the media practice and following the ethics in broadcast journalism. But first and foremost, before we go into broadcast journalism per se, let's just see what journalism is all about. Journalism is, according to academic scholars, is often defined not just as a collection or dissemination of news, but as a public service rooted in democratic principle and ethical responsibilities. So various scholars have offered nuanced definition that emphasize the role of journalism in society. According to Dennis McCurl from McCurl Mass Communication Theory, the definition given is journalism is the business of a set of institutions that publicizes information and commentary on contemporary affairs, normally presented as true and sincere to a dispersed and anonymous audience, meaning saying that McCurl's focus journalism as an institution that plays within media organization, highlighting process, communicating with people, and then sharing the knowledge or news or things with a wide audience that you don't know. So the core function providing truthful and sincere account of events, fulfilling the public needs for information and reaching mass audiences. So Michael Sutton from The Power of News, the definition given here is that journalism is a practice of gathering, assessing, creating and presenting news and information aiming at serving public good by informing, educating and engaging citizens. He highlights journalism as a public service. This is again the word that we will see later on, been repeated, public service that only inform but educates and engages citizens in the democratic process. The core function, journalism is a social institution that contributes to democracy by informing and engaging the public, thereby fostering a well-informed citizenry. But when you look at what John McManus said in market-driven journalism, because it's a little bit different, and because journalism, he said, is a set of practices and institution that follow certain norm, yes, and still telling the truth and independent, designed to inform public in democracy. But what is concerned is ethical dimension of journalism, because the pressure that the journalists and the world of media currently face is the commercial interest, the pressure from the marketplace, the commercial interest that can conflict with public service. So the core function is balancing market demand with journalistic integrity to prioritize truth and maintaining editorial independence, which sometimes can become a problem when we've been pressured by the marketplace or by the commercial interest. And therefore, journalism plays several vital roles in society. Often we see through the metaphors like watchdog, false estate. People always say that it is a form of storytelling. And each of these roles emphasizes a different aspect of journalism contribution to democracy and public life. We look at journalism as a watchdog. The role of a watchdog act as a guardian of public interest, monitoring those in power, government, corporation, institution to prevent abuses of authority and corruption. Journalists investigate and expose wrongdoing, holding leaders accountable for their action. So the purpose is to protect democracy by ensuring transparency and preventing abuse of power. The role is crucial in uncovering scandals such as the Watergate investigation that brought down the US president in 1973, if I'm mistaken. And the ethics that from here is that the watchdog function is guided by ethical principles such as truth, fairness, and accuracy. And as journalists must rely on credible sources and present evidence-based fact to uphold accountability. So, for example, that investigation that exposed government corruption, corporate scandal, or social justices, the Pentagon Papers, reporting of the Flint, Michigan water crisis, and a lot more that we have example around the world when the manifestation of journalism as a watchdog. And as a false estate, the word false estate derived from a term that traditional European concept of three estates of realm, the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. And we have one more estate, independent check on power. In democratic societies, the other estates traditionally refer to the branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. The press is considered as an official false estate because its role in scrutinizing these branches and informing public about their action. The purpose of journalism help balance power by providing citizens with information they need to engage civic life and make informed decisions. The concept emphasizes the importance of free and independent press in democracy. So, for example, that media coverage in political decision, legislative debates, judicial ruling plays an essential role in keeping citizens informed on how government institutions function, fulfilling the post-estate role. And then another role that we see is storytelling. This is the most important thing, that because we reporters or journalists, they tell stories. Yeah, so through storytelling, journalism engage the public emotionally and intellectually, helping people understand complex issues or feel connected to events that might otherwise seem distant or abstract. Good journalism translates into stories that spark public discussion, empathy, and action. Here is ethical storytelling involved representing facts accurately while also providing context and nuance. Journalists must avoid to give only focus on sensationalized issues and strive to tell stories that respect people involved, especially when reporting on sensitive or personal issues. So, coverage of natural disaster or story of individual overcoming hardship allow audiences to understand the human impact of broader events. Feature stories, long-form journalism, and documentaries amplify journalism's storytelling role. But a lot of things that we said about journalism, now we go into what is Islamic journalism. So, the influence of Islamic culture and heritage, however, has received surprisingly little scholarly attention, with a few exceptions. The research for what one could call Islamic journalism somewhat fell through the crack, which most likely resulted from dominance of Western journalism textbook and training. One question that drove the present analysis, therefore, was whether there is such thing as a distinctively Islamic journalism, one that has traits and properties different from other journalistic cultures. An Islamic perspective of journalism can be meaningfully derived from the main sources of Islamic worldview itself, which include Quran and Sunnah. So, the very principle of Islam through Quran and Sunnah is already at the base of Islamic journalism. We see later on the principle that we have in Islamic journalism at the end of this lecture, but we follow the practices established by the Prophet Muhammad SAW among his companions, the textual form of which contained in Quran and Hadith. So whatever we do in life, actually, especially when you do work as a journalist in journalism, we base on Quran and Sunnah on whatever we do, because both Quran and Sunnah encourage using reason and rationality as a basic means to protect us from untruths, inaccuracy, and evil doing. But let's go into a detail of what is broadcast journalism. I explain first about journalism because broadcast journalism fall under the category of journalism, but a little bit different in broadcast journalism. The principle is the same, the ethical is the same, but what makes it different from print media is because the mechanic of crafting broadcast news stories are unlike the parameters of most other media format. Here, brevity, which cherished, it has to be short and simple. Holding the audience attention is vital because the time span, the attention span is not that long, and accuracy is absolutely paramount. Many stories last no more than 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, while some bump and teasers flash in a mere 2 seconds. Even more daunting for broadcasters, they have but one opportunity to unveil the story. Because when we listen or watch the news, we have only one time, and consumer or viewers cannot go back and reread the story. Yes, I understand now we have internet and we have a lot of social media. We have YouTube where you can stop and rewind and look back. But in actual fact, when we watch news, especially if you watch in a crowd or in a place that you cannot control the device, so you only have one time only to watch the news. Unlike newspaper where people can read anytime, anywhere that they like, normally people who watch news often distracted and only give partial attention. Radios offer news while drivers motor along high speed in one-ton vehicle, for example, or you go to work in the morning, you listen to news on radio. Television news are watched by viewers who may be doing something else, eating, cleaning, or simply walking through the room. So there is no captive audience. Thus, delivering the news must be very crisp, clear, and easily understood. So, on professional media practice and ethics in broadcast journalism, which encompasses television, radio, and YouTube platform, plays a crucial role in informing the public. Given the widespread reach and influence of broadcast media, ethical considerations are paramount to ensure credibility, fairness, and public trust. Ethical broadcast journalism serves as a cornerstone of public trust in the media by adhering to principle of accuracy, impartiality, responsibility, and respect for privacy. Broadcasters ensure that their work uphold the highest standards of journalism, fostering a well-informed society. Because in broadcast journalism, that we have audio and visual, and when we have audio and video, and the visual and the sound that you listen to and the video that you watch can influence people more rather than reading a print media. Because when you read a print media, you can have maybe one or two photos, and then the rest you have to use your imagination to imagine what is the news trying to tell. But in broadcast journalists, we have video and audio can be very powerful to influence people or to explain and to show people what is the news is all about. Therefore, the ethical in broadcast journalism is a little bit more from journalism itself. Now, we look at the article number 1 is truthfulness and accuracy. Journalists must ensure that all information they broadcast is accurate and thoroughly fact-checked. False or misleading information can have serious consequences, including the spread of misinformation. Reliable sources should be used for gathering information. Journalists are responsible for verifying their sources, whether they are official records, eyewitness, or expert opinions. And from the Islamic point of view, we can see that it's the same because we have the truth and accuracy, sidq and haq. In Islam, truthfulness is a fundamental value. Journalists practicing Islamic journalism are required to pursue the truth or the haq and provide accurate, honest information. Spreading falsehood or misinformation is considered unethical, or in Islam is not permissible for us to tell lies or to be dishonest and to write not accurate situation or certain news. Yeah. So the Quran stresses the importance of truth, and in Quran says that, and do not mix the truth with falsehood or conceal the truth while you know it. This principle is central to Islamic journalism, where journalists are seen as responsible for reporting facts as they are without any distortion. We give one case study, one example. The NBC Deadline General Motor Truck incident in 1992. So what happened was, at that time, NBC News showed Deadline at a report in which they claimed that a certain model of General Motors trucks were prone to explosion in crashes. To demonstrate, they staged a crash involving a GM truck, but it was later revealed that the crash test was rigged with some sort of device to make the truck explode on camera and to make it even more sensation. So, the ethics is that the deliberate staging of an explosion misled the public, compromising the truthfulness of the report. So outcome, GM sued NBC, leading to a public apology from the network, and the case became a high-profile example on how not being truthful can lead to unethical practices in broadcast journalism. So Clifford, the Christian professor of communication ethics, says truth-telling is a foundation of journalism ethics. But in the context of broadcasting, where visual and auditory stimuli dominate, there is an increased temptation to sacrifice accuracy for entertainment or sensationalism. So this is very important, the first concept of telling truthfulness and accuracy. So the second article that we need to focus is responsibility, moral responsibility. Moral responsibility in broadcast journalism ethics refers to the duty of journalists to act with integrity, honesty, and a sense of accountability in their reporting. Broadcast journalists have a powerful influence on public opinion, and are entrusted with delivering information that can shape perceptions, behaviors, and decisions. In essence, moral responsibility in broadcast journalism is about upholding ethical standards that protect the integrity of the profession while ensuring that journalists fulfill their role as guardian of the truth and servant of the public good. So in Islam, Islamic journalism uphold the concept of Amana, which means trust or moral responsibility. Journalists are entrusted with the responsibility to provide their audience with truthful and beneficial information. Spreading rumors, defamatory content, or harmful stories goes against this responsibility. Islam emphasizes the careful use of words. "Oh, you have believed, fear Allah and speak words of appropriate justice." Journalists are morally bound to report with integrity and avoid showing sensationalism or harm in their report. Yeah. So we look at the case study. What happened? I think most of us know about BBC's Panorama program and the Princess Diana interview in 1995. The incident that time Martin Bashir, BBC famous journalist, conducted a famous interview with Princess Diana in 1995, in which she revealed intimate detail of her life, including her struggle within the British royal family. Decades later, it was revealed that Bashir had used deceptive tactics, including falsifying documents to secure interview. The ethical issue here is that the use of deceptive practices to gain access to an interview raised a serious ethical question about manipulation and dishonesty in journalism. So the outcome from this is that an investigation in 2021 concluded that Bashir acted unethically and that BBC covered up this action. The scandal led to widespread criticism of BBC's journalistic practices, renewed discussion on ethics in investigative journalism. So this is where the moral responsibility ethical is very important of being amanah, and you must have trust and moral responsibility for doing the right thing for the right reason. Then we move into fairness and impartiality. Fairness is being balanced. Balance is a central tenet of broadcast journalism ethics in providing the coverage. News should be presented without bias. On opposing viewpoint should be fairly represented to allow the audience to form an informed opinion. The objectivity journalists should remain neutral, especially when reporting on controversial or sensitive topic, avoiding personal opinions or biases that may influence the audience. So in Islam, justice or adil is a key value in Islam. Islamic journalism must ensure fairness and balance in reporting, avoiding bias or partiality. Reporting should represent different perspectives and give voices to all parties involved in the story, particularly for those who may have marginalized. In Quran says that, "Oh, you believe, be persistently standing firm for Allah, witnesses in justice, and do not let the hatred of people prevent you from being just. Be just, that is nearer to righteousness." This highlights the duty of journalists to report objectively and fairly, even when covering issues related to adversaries. The example given here is on the CNN coverage of the Gulf War in 1991. CNN at that time was still new and was praised for its live coverage of the Gulf War, especially in the groundbreaking use of the live satellite reporting, which is now is a common thing, but at that time was still new, and this is something that new to people around the world to see. However, some critics argue that the network became too reliant on official military sources and failed to offer critical perspective on the war. So the ethical issue here is that the ethical dilemma here involves balance and impartiality. Did CNN provide enough critical examination of government narrative, or did it become an uncritical conveyor of official confirmation? So outcome from this, CNN Gulf War coverage transformed broadcast journalism, but also sparked debates whether live, round-the-clock coverage compromises critical analysis in favor of immediacy, because we have to look into all the perspectives, but we can see this also been done all over the world now. News is, when they did not report, have a balanced report and only report from a certain angle or certain point of view because of certain political reason. So Walter Cronkite, a celebrated TV news anchor, said, "In seeking truth, you have to get both sides of a story." So in Islam, this is also encouraged for us to be balanced and impartiality. So we have to get the views from all angles in order for us to give a correct and also and with ethical for ethical reporting. Now we turn to the public interest. Serving the public, broadcast journalists have a duty to inform the public on matters of importance, contributing to an informed and educated society. This means reporting news that serve the common good and not merely just for a sensational story. Ethical media practice include recognizing the potential harm that report may cause to individual or group, making careful decisions to avoid unnecessary harm. So you have to think forward, to think in the future, and what can your story affect the people and affect a certain quarters of people, a group of people, or certain individual, and maybe the story can give harm to them. And we look from Islamic point of view, social responsibility and community welfare or maslahah. Islamic journalism is concerned with maslahah, the public interest and common good. It is tasked with focusing on stories and issues that benefit society, such as social justice, welfare and development, rather than merely seeking profit or sensationalism. Journalists are responsible for ensuring their reporting contributes positively to society's well-being and moral fabric rather than inciting hatred, division or harm. The sample that given here, because we have a lot of samples, this is what I chose, is from the Fox News during the early stage of COVID-19 in 2020. The incident was during the early stages of COVID-19 pandemic. Fox News faced accusation of downplaying the severity of the virus and spreading misinformation about the pandemic and related health measures. The ethical issues here that the ethical dilemma was about responsibility in providing accurate science-based information in a health crisis. Misinformation during such a crisis can cause widespread harm. Outcome is that public health experts criticized the network for irresponsibility. This example highlights the ethical responsibility of broadcasters to provide accurate, evidence-based information, especially during public health emergencies. So if you look at this, at that time, when we faced the COVID-19 in the early 2020, not only Fox News Channel, but all over the world, that we have this dilemma of whether to tell people or not on what was really happening, because people don't know at that time. By giving the correct information, and this is what news is all about, is to share to the public and telling to the public what is important. So this is a responsibility for the media house to inform the public, and then to help them to go through during that time, during the pandemic. So according to Professor of Journalism Philip said, in broadcast journalism, ethical responsibilities are amplified because the medium can reach millions instantaneously. The potential of both positive and negative impact is enormous, requiring that journalists exercise a heightened sense of accountability. So, because what been shown on television, because if you look in the 90s or 80s or 90s, during the time when I was a journalist, people will watch news, and maybe perhaps a group of people only watch news at that time. But now, with the advancements of technology, we have the YouTube and the social media. People can watch it not only one time, but after that, they can still watch it. And instead of reaching 1 or 2 million, it can reach 10, 20, 30 million. So if you tell lies, and it will affect not only to a small group of people, but it will affect to a large group of people. Then we go into respect for privacy. The privacy of individuals must be respected, especially in sensitive situations, for example, like trauma, grief, or medical condition. Intruding on personal life, it should be justified by a significant public interest. In certain cases, consent should be obtained before broadcasting personal or sensitive information about individual. In Islam places high value on privacy, hurma, and dignity higher of individuals. Islamic journalism encourages respect for the personal dignity and privacy of individuals, discouraging intrusive or harmful reporting that violates this principle. Islamic journalists should avoid gossip, unnecessary exposure of private life, or again, for sensationalism. The Quran once warned us against backbiting and invasion of privacy. In Quran says, do not spy or backbite each other. So privacy is very important in journalism, especially in broadcast journalism. This is something that also become an ethical dilemma for broadcast journalists because of the deceptive method that have been used. Yeah. So let me explain first about this. ABC's Food Lion scandal in 1992 is also been done in many other investigative reporting. The incident is when ABC's Primetime Live used undercover journalists to expose unsanitary practices at Food Lion grocery stores. The journalists obtained job at Food Lion and secretly filmed alleged health violation. And the ethical issue here is that the usage of deceptive methods, undercover reporting and secret cameras to obtain footage raise question about whether the ends justify the means. Some argue that while the public needed to know, the methods undermine journalistic integrity. So the outcome is that Food Lion sued ABC for fraud and trespassing. Although ABC was not held liable for defamation, the case raised an important question about when, if ever, it is ethical to deceive in pursuit of a story. So if you look from Islamic point of view, the respect of privacy and dignity, it is wrong for you to do that. It is wrong for you, for people or for journalists to go into without any permission to do the reporting. That's why in journalism we have off-record and on-record thing when things that you can report or things that you cannot report. But there's some scholar and some practitioners also argue that you have to do this in order for you to get the story. But because sometimes deceptive methods will be used in order to them to get something that how to say this, something that impossible to get if you go to the right way. So to the front door, you have to go to the back door to do something to get it. But the thing is still, the ethical issue here is that you invade the privacy of the person or the institution in order for you to get the story. In the famous story, the Watergate scandal, when in 1973, affecting President Nixon to lose his presidency, at that time that they received the points or they receive stories about it from someone inside the administration. They did not go inside there and film or to get the story by deceptive methods. So this is something that been argued by scholars in journalism and also by practitioners. But I believe from Islamic point of view, it is something that you cannot do. You have to respect the privacy for other people. So Lee Witkins, the journalism of professor, said the ethical dilemma for broadcast journalism often stem from tension between the public's right to know and the need to respect individual privacy and dignity. Ethical decision-making requires constant reflection on how best to balance these competing obligations. And then we look at accountability and transparency, correction of errors. When mistakes are made, it is essential to correct them openly and as quickly as possible. Transparency helps maintain the trust between the media and its audience. Journalists should attribute information to their sources, allowing audiences to assess the credibility of the information. This is the promotion of good and prevention of harm. Amar bil ma'ruf wa nahi an munkar. A core Islamic principle in the promotion of good, ma'ruf, and prevention of evil, munkar. Islamic journalism should highlight positive contribution to society and expose corruption, injustice, or immorality, and the goal of reform and moral improvement. Journalists have a duty to engage in constructive criticism that benefits society and discourages harm. This principle is about guiding people towards what is beneficial and away from harmful practices. In the case of the clean water crisis in 2015 and 2016 in the US, the story overview is that in Flint, Michigan, residents were exposed to lead-contaminated water after the city switched its water supply source. Despite early warning, officials failed to react, and the water crisis became a symbol of government negligence. So at that time, news outlets like CNN, MSNBC, and local station brought national attention to the crisis. Journalists expose the failures of government officials to address the contamination and hold those responsible accountable for the damage done to the public health. So here, transparency and accountability. Journalists dug into the government document, interviewed experts, gave voice to fleeing residents whom complaint had been ignored. They demanded answers from the public official and covered congressional hearing investigating the issue. The impact here, the sustained media coverage helped bring national attention to a crisis leading to criminal charges against public officials, a massive cleanup effort, and a new water regulation. So this is where it is important to promote the good and the prevention of harm, and also accountability and transparency. So we need to do things like this in order for us to help so those people, especially those people who have no voice or heart, and their voice is not being heard, and it's difficult for them to express what they want, or to express what is right or wrong. So, according to John C. Merrill, professor of journalism, ethical journalism, particularly in broadcasting, demands more than mere adherence to codes. It requires moral imagination and commitment to the public good. Then, conflict of interest, another ethical in broadcast journalism. Independent broadcast journalists should avoid situations where their personal interest, affiliation, or relationships might influence their professional judgment. If there is potential conflict of interest, it must be disclosed to the audience. For example, financial or personal involvement in a story. This is what John McManus stressed from the beginning of this lecture, that the pressure from the provider of the economy, or from the people who pay for the story. So this is for financial background. So this conflict of the interest, that you must inform people about it first. So balance of expression, Hurriyat Al-Ra'i, while Islam encourages freedom of expression, this freedom is balanced by responsibility. Journalists should express opinions and report freely, but must do so within the bounds of truth, justice, and ethical standard, avoiding harm to others or society. Freedom of speech should not be used to promote hatred, division, untruths, but rather to contribute positively to the society. In the case of Al Jazeera coverage of Arab Spring in 2011, the incident that time during the Arab Spring, Al Jazeera was praised for its extensive on-ground coverage of protests across Middle East. However, some accused network of biased reporting, particularly in coverage of uprising in countries where Qatar, the network host country, had political interests. So ethical issues here, the allegation of partiality raise concern on how political influences may shape a broadcaster's coverage of significant events. But Al Jazeera defended its reporting, but the controversy highlighted the challenges broadcast journalists face in maintaining impartiality, especially when there may be external pressure from government or sponsors. And avoid of sensationalism. While broadcast journalists is often driven by the need to attract viewers or listeners, ethical journalism avoid exaggerated or to sensationalize coverage just for higher rating. The priority should always be factual, to be factual, and to report responsibly. In Islam also we have this, where Islamic journalism discourages sensationalism and slanderous reporting. Islam prohibits iftira, slander, or riba, backbiting, as they harm individual and society. Journalists should avoid over-dramatizing stories or reporting on unfounded allegations. This principle ensures that reporting focuses on substantive issues, avoid causing harm, and respect the dignity of those involved. The one story that I want to share here about the Hurricane Katrina coverage 2005. The story overview at that time, Hurricane Katrina was one of the deadliest natural disasters in the U.S. history, devastating New Orleans and other areas along the Gulf Coast. While storm and its aftermath deserve wide coverage, some broadcasters were criticized for sensationalizing the chaos and looting that occurred during the disaster. Major networks, including Fox News and CNN, focused heavily on dramatic images of looting, violent crime, and breakdown in laws and order, sometimes at the expense of balanced reporting on rescue efforts and struggle of the affected communities. So that ethical concern critique argued that emphasis on violence and lawlessness painted an unfair and exaggerated picture of New Orleans residents, many of whom were portrayed as criminal rather than victims in need of help. This sensationalism overshadowed the real story of the government failures in disaster response. So the impact, the coverage contributed to a negative public perception of the victim, with some accusing the media of perpetuating racial stereotype. It raised questions about journalistic responsibility during crisis and ethics of focusing on the most shocking elements of the story rather than a balanced view of the situation. So a media historian, John Durham Peter, said that broadcast journalism wields an extraordinary power to shape public perception. Ethical journalism, therefore, must be vigilant in its dedication to truth and avoidance of manipulation, particularly through visual or auditory framing. So, with all the ethical principle that we saw just now in broadcast journalism, we derive to four key principles in Islamic journalism. One, the principle is the concept of haq. The Quran clearly instructs, do not mix haq with batil and hide the haq knowledgeably. In this research, Amana counts at least 138 references to the root word naba, mean news, that must be based on truth and mixed with willful falsehood in Quran. The principle is essential as indicated in the Quran. O believers, verify it, lest you adversely impact some people unknowingly and then become embarrassed over what you did. Furthermore, Hamada argues that news must carry a strong sense of responsibility and accountability on the part of journalists and their organization. So the first principle is the concept of haq or truth. The second principle is based on a set of concepts that cluster around pedagogic function of journalists as public communicators, known as tabligh, which broadly means to spread truth and good deeds to the public. In the context of this principle, journalists are expected to play the role of an educator or teacher who promotes a positive attitude to the members of the audience and encourages them to do good deeds, enjoying what is right and forbidding what is wrong. The key principle obliges Muslims to invite good and forbid, whether in words or act or silent denunciation, any evil what they see being committed. So the first principle is truth. Second principle is tabligh, as to spread the truth and spread good deeds to the public. And the third principle is the what we call maslahah, which means to seek the best of the public interest. The idea behind is perhaps best illustrated is one of the Prophet Muhammad saying, whoever of you sees an evil action, you must change it with his hand. If he is not able to do so, then with his tongue. If he is not able to do so, then with his heart, and this is the weakest of faith. Is Hadith Muslim 34. What this principle essentially calls for is a profoundly interventionist attitude and participant stance. Journalists are not seen as a detached observers, as bystanders or uninvolved witnesses. To the contrary, journalists are expected to involve themselves in public discourse and to take stance in order to promote social change in society. Journalists serve their audience in the role of agent of change who contributes to the betterment of the society. The final principle is called wasatiyah, which means moderation in concept, emphasized in both Quran and Sunnah. Moderation in this context implies impartiality and fairness. Journalists may be endorse a particular political cause or support one side of the conflict over the other. The core meaning of moderation is justice or adil. This notion carries a wide array of connotations, including straightforwardness, impartiality, fairness, equitableness, probity, honesty, uprightness, equitable composition, or just composition. There are obvious tension between moderation principle and maslahah, if the latter is primarily understood in terms of even interventionist attitude. So, journalism, particularly in the realm of broadcasting, carries a significant responsibility as it shapes public opinion and impart societal behavior. Ethical practices in journalism, such as truthfulness, transparency, fairness, and accountability, are fundamental to maintaining public trust and upholding the integrity of the profession. Sensationalism, bias, and misinformation can erode the credibility of the media and damage the fabric of the society. Because of it's very important, if the media house lose credibility, then people will not believe anymore on the news being carried by the media outlet, and this can become detrimental to the business itself or for the media house. From an Islamic perspective, journalism is not just about dissemination of information, but about upholding justice and promoting the truth. Islamic teaching advocate for truthfulness, authentic justice, adil, and accountability of hizbah in communication. Journalists must avoid harm by being mindful of the potential consequences of their reporting and by steering clear of sensationalism, defamation, and the exploitation of personal tragedies. As broadcast journalists, you are not only professional but also a custodian of information that shapes the moral and ethical compass of society. The role of the media is akin to what of the watchdog or false estate, like we discussed early on, holding power to account and ensuring the society function with transparency. Whether viewed from universal ethics of journalism or through the lens of Islamic principle, the goal remains the same: to serve public with the integrity, truth, and justice. So in a world increasingly driven by fast-paced media, let us strive to be responsible journalists who practice with both professional diligence and a deep sense of ethical commitment. This is how we maintain the noble purpose of journalism and contribute positive to the society. With that, I end my lecture. Thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Harmi, for an interesting sharing about an ethics, Islamic ethics of in broadcast journalism. Yeah, so with a vast experience in broadcast journalism, so it seems to it's good, yeah, to listen to Dr. Harmi sharing, yeah, based on his experience. So we received several questions from the audience here, from the participants. So I think I'll to the time. Perhaps we'll just take 2 questions here, and the rest maybe Dr. Harmi can reply to the chat box later on. Okay, the first one, I'll just take this question from Umar Arimayo. Is undercover journalism permissible in Islam?
Like, thank you, Dr. Aini. And like I said before, it is something that been argued and been discussed from journalistic point of view, yeah. But then in Islam, it is something not permissible for us to do so, to spying, and without getting permission. But some might argue that we must do that in order for us to get the truth, for us to get the story. And from this is something not from the scholar, but something from where I experienced myself working last time. In newsroom, in TV station, that sometimes we weigh that the importance of doing so, that if we need to do it for the greater good, then the boss will allow you to do so to get the story. The story is what been said, the news, or we call story, to get the story, to get the news, and to share with the public, because it is important to expose certain things. But in general, if you ask me now, I would say that spying is something that not permissible in Islam.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harmi. Okay, I'm going to take another question from I'm not sure is it Professor or Mr. Nawawi. I think the ABC Food Lion is legitimate for public interest. It's not personal privacy in this case. So the question is, what about spying the enemies? Yeah?
The enemies, yeah. What about spying the enemies? Even the local authority in Malaysia will go inspect the kitchen, restaurant, and ensure. Yes, it's different. When okay, I agree with the when the local authorities in Malaysia will go inspect kitchen of a restaurant, because they are authorities. They have the right to do so. For example, I give you, okay, with this I can give a clear example. Sometimes we watch in the news that the news crew together with police, they go and rush the vice place, and then they take video, and then they catch certain people. But this is with the authority, so it's different thing. But when you yourself go inside there, bring a camera, hidden camera, and then record all the thing happening inside and bring out the story. This is where the argue on the ethical point of view. If you look at from scholarly point of view also, they have some might argue that it is permissible, some might argue it is not permissible to do so. But for our context here, I think from the Islamic point of view, that it's clearly stated in Quran also, that spying is something that you cannot do that. You know, it is something that is not permissible in Islam in doing so. There's other ways of getting the story and to get the information from the people. So if you get from the inside story from the side, so there is something that you can use. So there is something different as spying the enemies. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Dr. Harmi. We have actually a few more questions on the chat box here, so maybe Dr. Harmi can reply the questions
Okay.
later on. You can just reply. So thank you very much, Dr. Harmi Taazim, for a very interesting sharing and also responding to the questions. So we've completed the two lectures this morning. We should resume with another two lectures, another two different topics on political science, also sociology point of view from an Islamic perspective at 11. So we shall now have a break, a quick break. So we'll continue our session at 11 o'clock. Yeah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. Doctor, can you try to share screen? Yes, yes, we can see it.
You can see my screen?
Yes, yes, Doctor. Sister Anju, are you here?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. I am Anju. So I will start the moderating from this session. So this session is about ethnic and governance and Islam perspective. Dr. Zacky Fouz is an assistant professor of political science in the Department of Political Science at the IIUM. His research fields cover political theory, Islamic political role, and Muslim minority studies. The third week will deliver into the ethical principles of Islamic politics, focusing on Islamic primary sources and highlighting respect for moral order, justice, and unity, while also emphasizing accountability in Islamic governance. So, Doctor, you will have 40 minutes to present your lecture. After the presentation, there will be 5-minute Q&A session. You can start your lecture speech now. Thank you.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasul Kareem. Amma ba'd. Thank you very much, Sister MC, for a kind introduction. And this is the third lecture, actually, in this course. In the previous two sessions, we covered two different important topics. In the first lecture, we discussed about political science as a field of study, and also different meanings of politics, and also different definitions of political science. And we also, in that lecture, also we reflected about an Islamic perspective of political science, how it is somewhat different from a contemporary mainstream political thought. In the second lecture, we discussed Islamic political philosophy. And in that session last week, as I remember, we reflected some ontological principles of Islamic political philosophy and how those ontological principles were incorporated within the classical Islamic political theory, and how those ontological principles and Islamic political philosophy is different from Western political philosophy. And so in today's lecture, we are reflecting upon ethics in governance, and or we can use the ethics in politics from an Islamic perspective. So why this topic is very important and significant. So before that, I would like to present the content of today's lecture. So we will discuss in today's lecture initially Islamic political thought between ethics and models, a contemporary perspective. So I will reflect upon, in the last lecture also, I shed light on some contemporary dynamics and evolving debates within Islamic political thought. For example, Islam and violence, Islam and democracy, and also Islam and modern state, Islam and human rights. These are some key issues that shape contemporary political thought. Today I am going to reflect on another important aspect, which is about the debate between whether we need to give priority to ethics or models in Islamic political theory. Then I will discuss some core political values, which is those values are being derived from the Quran and Sunnah. So how those values, I introduce those values, and then I explain how those values are significant in terms of thinking about politics and governance in contemporary times. Then finally, I conclude my presentation with an analytical conclusion. So, Islamic political thought between ethics and models. So you all know that today, if you read the political science literatures, Islamic political thought literatures, which have been published in the last 10 to 15 years, and or even if you listen to a few the talks with regard to Islamic political thought in the recent past, you can identify that there is an interesting debate going on among the scholars, which is what is the essence of Islamic political thought, whether the models that we had needs to be revived again if we want to create an Islamic polity, or we need to reflect on the ethics and values from an Islamic perspective in order to reorient ourselves into the contemporary times. In this debate, we can find two important school of thought. For example, as I showed here in this diagram, there's a debate whether to give political values the priority or whether to give the priority to the political models that we had in the past in terms of reorienting Muslim Ummah in contemporary times. So some scholars argue we should focus on political values or ethics in Islamic perspective in order to revive our political tradition in modern time. So political models that we had in the past, such as caliphate, sultanate, or today we have modern territorial states. These are just models that can come and go, that can appear and disappear. And these models are not important in Islamic perspective. Rather, the important fundamental in Islamic political thought is political values. So we need to, they argue that we need to focus on those values and to think about how to applying those values in political systems that we have in current times. So that is what we need to focus on. This set of scholars argue like that. Who are those? Like you can find in the right side, Ahmad Al-Raisuni and Dr. Ahmad Raisuni is one of the prominent Islamic thinkers and scholars in prominent scholar in the Muslim world. He's famous for his Maqasid al-Sharia studies. He argues like that Islam prioritizes political values than models. He just say the caliphate, the model that the political unity and uniformity that we had in the past, that is not that much important if we want to revive Islamic polity. The important is to think about the values. That is what fundamental. The justice, freedom, equality, and also we can go on listing these values. So these values need to be revived. That should be our focus, not the focus of reviving the caliphate or all this what we had in the past, all those institutions that we had in the past. So even what we should do now, we need to think how those Islamic values can be used or at least applied in policy making process in contemporary state should be given the priority, rather than just thinking about the caliphate and reviving the caliphate, or just admiring the past caliphate as the absolute model that Islam wanted to promote. He just reject those arguments. He says we need to give priority to the values rather than the models. There is another set of scholars, right? Like scholars Wa'il Hallaq, scholar Wa'il Hallaq, and also Uwaimin Anjum. Those are the scholars, they argue, yes, political value is important, but we should not disregard the political models as well. For example, they say no any political model in the world which is value neutral. Rather, all the political institutions and models, they have their own values embedded within it. For example, if we take the modern state, that has its own philosophy, and if you want to think about caliphate, it had its own philosophy. So all these models are not just models, but rather those models have particular philosophy behind it. So we cannot just disregard those philosophies, and we cannot simply say that we just want to stick to values rather than models, because models also important philosophically according to these scholars. So this is one of the interesting evolving debate within Islamic political thought in contemporary times, whether to give priority to the values or the political models. I would like to just introduce this debate rather than I'm giving a verdict which side of the argument is correct. Rather, I am saying that this is an evolving debate, that we might agree and disagree on both the arguments, both the arguments that have been put forward by both of these set of scholars. But still, in this today's session, I just introduce these debates to you, and you can read and further develop your ideas on this. But my point is that despite there's a disagreement whether the political models also need to be discussed along with political values, or whether we need to give priority to just political values disregarding political models, what the similarity both of these scholars agree that political values is significant, very important in terms of in orienting Islamic political thought to the contemporary world. So both of these set of scholars agree that Islam has a specific set of values that always we need to take into consideration in doing politics, in practicing governance. So some of those values I am going to introduce today. Most of those values are very familiar to you. So in case if you are familiar, this is just a reminder to the participants who have already quite good familiarity with these values. And so the values that we are going to discuss today are Tawhid, Amana, Al-Adl, Al-Ukhuwa, Al-Islah, and Al-Ihsan. These are the 6 fundamental values or value system or value paradigm that shape Islamic perspective of governance, or that actually makes the very fundamental or very basics of Islamic governance. These values are the very basics of Islamic governance. So we are going to look at these values one by one, and also we are going to reflect how these values can be incorporated into the contemporary governance or political systems. So first value is Tawhid. As you all know, we even discussed in the last session that Tawhid is the fundamental value and a principle and a philosophy in the Islamic worldview, which makes Tawhid is a distinguishing feature of Islamic worldview. Actually, Tawhid, we can argue Tawhid from a different perspective, and you know that many contemporary scholars actually see Tawhid not just as a belief in one God. Rather, they try to argue that Tawhid is a system of knowledge. They coined a new term in this discussion, that Tawhidic epistemology. Tawhidic epistemology means that we bring Tawhid, concept of Tawhid, or consider concept of Tawhid as the center of Islamic knowledge production exercise. What do we mean when we say Tawhidic epistemology? Again, I would like to repeat it from a different perspective. It is to consider, Tawhidic epistemology means it is to consider revelation as the center of the human life, or the center of Islamic knowledge production exercise. That is what we mean when we consider Tawhidic epistemology. So the Tawhid is a very principle. It shapes Islamic perspective of governance. The very principle that actually give the distinguishing nature to the Islamic perspective of governance. So Tawhid also means unity in creation. So we know that all the creations, not only human being but also the animals, the environment that we have in today's in this world, all those creations are just a creation of the God Almighty. So that there is a unity among those creations. This is the second fundamental idea that Tawhid try to highlight. The third important idea is the equality among human beings, because all human beings are the highest noble creation of God Almighty. So all creations are equal in the God's eye. So we say that these three ideas makes the Tawhid an important and significant fundamental principle in Islamic worldview. And so I think we know many things. We have read and we have listened to this Tawhidic epistemology. You might read and listen from many talks on this. So I'm not going to spend more time on this. Rather, I'm trying to highlight how this Tawhidic perspective can be incorporated into the Islamic concept of governance. So Tawhidic principle fundamentally says that politics and governance, both are two-dimensional, material and spiritual. So contemporary Western political philosophy is just perceive politics as immaterially. It always try to strategize politics for material ends, material purposes. Rather, politics and governance from Islamic perspective is both material and it has a spiritual dimension. So this is another significant feature of Tawhidic epistemology when it comes to the governance. Also, Tawhidic epistemology demands to develop political personalities who are God-fearing, who are pious by themselves. This is another important implication on governance when we look governance from the Islamic Tawhidic perspective. The third is Tawhidic epistemology and Tawhidic paradigms says that politics is also part of an act of worship. So we need to involve in politics as a worship. This is another important implication on politics and governance, looking from Tawhidic perspective. And next is bringing Islamic values into the policy making process is another fundamental that we learn from this Tawhidic principle. So Tawhid is the fundamental in Islamic knowledge system. So it is the paradigm that shapes the Islamic perspective of politics by giving politics a spiritual dimension and also considering politics as an act of worship, and also bringing Islamic values into the policy making process through these three mechanisms. Tawhid influences the governance process or political process. And the second value is Amana. Amana means, as you can see in the screen, that Amana comes from a root word. Amana means in English peace, safety, and protection. This is the second important Islamic value that actually shaped the entire paradigm of political and governance in Islamic perspective. Amana means the trust and also the vicegerency. As you Surah Nisa verse 58 says that that Allah commands you to return trust to their rightful owners. When you judge between people, judge with fairness. So this Amana is a trusty sort of a trust that God has given to us, that we need to protect his trust in this world. So what does Amana mean? It's an aspiration to be entrusted to bring peace and safety from any danger and risk through a trustworthy protector. So the God has given us this world to establish his deen, and so politics is one of the important instrument mean to establish his deen and his values, the values that he has revealed through his revelation. So it's our responsibility to bring those values to actualize those values in political sphere. And this is the Amana that we have. We need to realize, we need to achieve, we need to actualize in this world. And politics is one of the important means and sphere that we can use and deploy to realize those values. And what are the implications on governance, these values? So Amana as a value says there is no place for corruption and mismanagement of resources in Islamic governance. That guidance and that perspective comes from a very principle of Amana. Also, the paradigm or the value of Amana says that in an Islamic governance, and the selection and the appointment of officials should be done in a proper way, and the appropriate officials and leaders should be appointed. So this is another important aspect of Amana, because that's the trust that we need to crystallize, we need to actualize in this world. And also importantly, the Al-Amana also demands from the Muslims and from an Islamic polity to establish shura and also increase the public participation in governance, and also to empower the civil society organizations. How this is connected with Amana? Because we know that Amana is about trust, it's about responsibility. So in order to increase the responsibility, in order to increase the accountability, we need to develop mechanisms. So Islam focuses on developing Islamic personalities who can handle the governance with piety and in cleanness. But still, Islam doesn't rely on individuals fully in terms of realizing those values. Islam as equally demanding that we Muslims need to become pious Muslims in terms of dealing with power, and also Islam demands that we need to develop external institutions that actually check politicians, those state officials, and make those state officials accountable. Those institutions are very vital to establish Amana in an Islamic polity. So establishing Amana in an Islamic polity is not just an outcome of a personal piety. Rather, we need institutions to realize that. Yes, Islam wants individual state officials and also politicians to be pious and respectful, and also they should actually take their responsibility seriously. But we also should have our own institutions that we check them whether they are responsible, accountable, whether they are doing their whether they are doing right things. So, in order to establish Amana institutionally, Islamic scholars argue that we should have a powerful civil society organizations, a powerful shura mechanism, and a very powerful public participation in policy making process. We need to increase the public participation and empower civil society organizations through different institutions and mechanisms, so that eventually help an Islamic polity to achieve Amana in its fullest sense. Rather than just depending on the personal piety of the officers, we should have an institutions to back them, to shape them, and to actually pressure them to be accountable. And also, Amana demands transparency in state public policy making process. These all are implications on governance and politics that we can think of. We can think of when we're talking about Amana. So Amana is a comprehensive value, but these are a few things that we can reflect on specifically in political sphere. And the third important value in Islamic politics is al-adl. We can translate it as justice, which is a very cardinal value in Islamic worldview, and also in Quran actually. Quran says, "Indeed, we send our messengers with clear proofs, and with them we set down the scripture and the balance of justice, so that people may administer justice." Surah Al-Hadid, verse 25. So this verse actually directly demands from Muslim polity that justice needs to be upheld, and justice is the central value in Islamic political thought. And Islamic polity cannot be called an Islamic polity if there is no justice. That's why some scholars even argued, like Imam Ibn Taymiyyah said, even if God will punish a polity if there is no justice, even that polity is they are Muslims, even the polity is full of Muslims. If there is no justice, God will punish them. But God will not punish if there is a justice, even that polity is a non-Muslim polity. So justice is a very central value for Islamic political thought. So adl is one of the term that we use in Arabic. So adala means in Arabic the straightness. When we translate it literally, it means straightness, balance, proportion. And also some some scholars of language, they actually conceptualize adl as putting things in its right place. So what is adl? Generally, equality. It's about equity. It's about fairness, which are right opposite to inequality, discrimination, and oppression. So in Islamic polity, one of the basic tasks of Islamic polity and political leadership is to establish equality and fairness. Islamic cannot be Islamic political leadership cannot be an oppressive leadership. It cannot discriminate among its citizens. This is a fundamental idea of adl in Islamic governance. So when we take this value into the paradigm of politics and its public policy making process, that this adl, the value, that can be translated into different fundamental principles. One is all individuals are equal before the law and in an Islamic polity. The second, individuals are innocent until being proven guilty through a fair judgment. So all individuals are innocent. All individuals are equal before the law. They need to be treated with equality. All citizens are equal, regardless of their religion and race. This is one of the fundamental principles in Islamic politics and within an Islamic polity. And this principle actually says torture is prohibited in Islam. So we cannot use torture as a method for an investigation. We cannot use torture to as a means to persecute someone. So we need this. Adl means that it treats human. It actually demands Islamic political leadership to protect the dignity of the human being. And also, very important implication in governance of Adl is the concept of separation of power. Separation of power means the power of a state needs to be divided between the executive and judiciary and the legislature. Legislature, where the laws are being made, and when the law being made, meaning to say that law cannot be implemented, you need to send the law for the executive for the to get his or her approval, executive's approval. Then the law needs to be needs to be passed to the judiciary for judicial review. Then only after the approval of the executive and judiciary, only the law come into the practice. So each of these three, judiciary and executive and legislature, check each other's power. This is a very, very sophisticated concept in modern political system. And this separation of power, actually, why it came into being in the first place is to ensure the justice, ensure that everyone is treated equally, no abuse of power. This is the fundamental purpose of separation of power. Just to separate the power or distribute the power among the different sectors of the government. Through that, this concept try to say that through separating the power, we can ensure that power is not abused. So this concept then is a very sophisticated concept to establish justice in modern societies and modern governing system. So if the power is accumulated within one institution, then there is a high chance that the power can be abused. And so Al-Adl, and as an Islamic value system, supports Al-Adl as a paradigm, as a cardinal value, virtue in Quran. We can say that this value actually endorses the separation of power concept, and it demands such a separation to ensure that justice is established, justice is upheld. And the next value that actually very important for Islamic polity and politics is al-ukhuwa. So Quran says the believers are but a single brotherhood. Unity among the Muslims should be one of the highest principle in Islamic politics. An Islamic state or an Islamic polity cannot make a policy, cannot endorse a policy that actually go against the interest of their brothers in another country. They cannot make a policy that actually hurt another Muslim brother in another country. So unity, even within a country or outside of the country, unity is one of the highest principles that we need to take into consideration in our policy making process. Unity in the sense we have two types of unity or two layers of unity: the unity among the Muslims, unity among the believers, and unity between Muslims and non-Muslims. So when we make policies, we should always think about the unity aspect, whether this policy will strengthen or will empower the unity among the Muslims, or it will actually divide the people. So if a policy going to divide or hurt some segment of the polity, we should abstain from upholding those policies. Our policies always needs to support the unity and solidarity and cohesion among the citizens. So Islamic government should not promote polarization. Islamic government should not, and it is not an Islamic government if it promote polarization. And what are the implications on governance? Actually, this al-ukhuwa as a paradigm which demands from an Islamic polity and Islamic political leadership to promote institutions that actually increase social cooperation, like to support waqf, zakat. So these institutions, if those institutions functions well, then that will increase the social cohesion and cooperation and social caring among the people in a particular state. And also al-ukhuwa demands a trust building efforts between the ruler and the people. So, and also al-ukhuwa demands in Islamic polity to establish equality and social justice. So there will be, in an Islamic polity, there shouldn't be a wide gap between the rich and the poor, and also between the elites and the middle class people and the lower class people. Meaning to say, there should be a sense of social. Islamic polity needs to always take into consideration the aspect of social justice and equality among its citizens. So this is another important principle. You see, Hamilton Gibb is one of the famous Islamic political, he's a historian, is a political historian. He in 1932 wrote that Islam has a still further service to render to the cause of humanity. It says Islam possesses a magnificent tradition of interracial understanding and cooperation. No other society has such a record of success, uniting in an equality of status, of opportunity, and of endeavors so many and so various races of humankind. Islam in the past united many races, many cultures, many different types of communities. So that sort of equality and that sort of social justice needs to be revived when we think of Islamic politics in modern times. So for that purpose, we can deploy the Islamic paradigm of al-ukhuwa. And also another important value is al-islah. Islah means salaha, means in literal translation, it's good, meaning it's righteous, and also aslaha, sometimes we may translate that as a reform and reconcile. So meaning to say transformation. Islamic politics means it's one of the purpose of Islamic politics is to transform the people and the country from a state of bad to a state of goodness, and from the good to better, and from better to perfection. So it's one of the purpose of Islamic political polity and Islamic government should be to promote good conduct among the people, and also to create an atmosphere of goodness, an environment of goodness. This is one of the purpose of Islamic politics. So government has a role in shaping the environment, in shaping the public sphere in light of Islamic worldview, so that individual citizens can be protected, and also can actually, those environment will nourish the individual citizens towards the better. So what are the implications on governance? And it's asked us to, those al-islah as a paradigm demands developing mechanisms to enjoin good and forbid the evil in the public sphere. Also, it demands developing mechanisms to increase effective public participation in policy making process, because once when we increase the public participation in policy making process, it actually brings us different perspectives and better choices to shape the policies in light of Islam. And also this value actually demands democracy as a political system to be established, and also to increase mechanisms of accountability, and also that also demands us to ensure the freedom is realized, because if there is no freedom, people don't have people couldn't think how they can become better. If we can ensure freedom, it will allow citizens to think creatively in terms of developing new ideas, new mechanisms to position the Islamic polity thinking about moving towards the future. And finally, I would say al-ihsan is the sixth important paradigm of Islamic politics and Islamic governance. It actually it has a multi-dimensional nature, meaning to say the ihsan means just showing benevolence, fairness, and showing mercy, and doing things with sincerity. These are very common principles, common values that we need to practice in all spheres of our life. And it also, so that as a result, it has its own significance in governance as well. And so this shows that we need to always promote good deeds, and we need to always think about the process rather than structure of politics. And also we need to always promote love rather than just law. And also we need always prioritize mercy and forgiveness more than retribution. These are the key values that should shape our daily life, and also that also need to be taken into consideration in governance mechanism. What are the implications of those values? Actually, al-ihsan actually supports the concept of sustainable development, because sustainable development means developing. We think of development considering the future generations, considering our respect for nature. This concept of sustainable development, we can approach that concept from the Islamic paradigm of ihsan. Also, ihsan demands us to establish fair distribution of wealth among its citizens of a country. Also, al-ihsan demands us to balance the individual interest and the social interest. We cannot just negate the individual interest in the name of society. Also, we cannot just disregard the collective interest, community interest in the name of safeguarding the individuals. We need to strike a balance, and that's the beauty in Islamic governance. Ihsan means just ihsan means in the bottom line of the Islamic paradigm is to increase the beauty in the governance through institutions that help us to beautify our governance. So how we can beautify our governance? Focusing on sustainable development, fair distribution, and balancing the individual interest and the society. These are the few paradigms and few values that has a great implication on governance and politics. So here are my three important conclusions at the end of my presentation. Islamic values are both eternal and universal, serving as a timeless framework for guiding human behavior and governance. So Islamic values are both applicable to human individual behavior, and that also applicable to governance. It is a universal and eternal and multidimensional. The second conclusion, in the development of Islamic political concepts, these values should take precedence over external models, ensuring that any political system rooted in Islam remains true to its foundational principles. Unlike modern political ideologies, which are often shaped by temporal and context-specific concerns, Islamic values provide a more holistic, moral, compass that transcends time and place. The third conclusion, Islamic values emphasize justice, accountability, and the well-being of society as a whole, which can inspire modern political structures to evolve in a way that aligns with both spiritual and material progress. Thus, Islamic values have the potential to shape more just and effective political system in today's world. That's all from me for today. Thank you very much.
So now let's have a Q&A session. If you have any question, leave them in the chat or raise hand, please. Doctor, there is a question in chat room, meeting chat.
Yeah, question. So how many minutes I have to?
5 minutes for questions.
Yeah, so many questions here. So I apologize that I couldn't answer all, but I just go through and I try to give my opinion as a whole. There's a question about freedom actually. What type of freedom actually Islam supports? Yes, I understand the question. The freedom is one of the very sensitive topic today because, as correctly said by the brother who actually raised this question, that Islam, in Islamic perspective, yes, Islamic perspective of freedom is not an absolute freedom, meaning to say Islam gives freedom, but also Islam says that freedom comes with responsibility, that we need to use the freedom, we need to use the space of freedom with responsibility. It shouldn't be, Islam does not endorse the freedom in a way that you can do whatever you want. Rather, Islam says that freedom needs to be used in a way that that bring betterment, that bring perfection to the human being. And so yes, Islam does not support absolute freedom, but equally, yes, Islam supports freedom, but we can say, rather than absolute freedom or conditioned freedom, we can say Islam supports freedom with responsibility and accountability. That's Islamic perspective of freedom. If someone wants to ask through, yes, direct question, I would give a chance to him as a final question. Isa Musa, yes, you can unmute and ask your question.
Anyone want to have a direct question?
So I think so, because he just raised his hand.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Salam.
Doctor, sir, my question goes this way. Under the caption, you mentioned unity between Muslims and non-Muslims. Does that translate to what we have here, what they call interfaith relationship?
Okay, your question is about Muslims and non-Muslims. Can you repeat it again?
What I said, the issue of Muslim non-Muslim relation. There are issues here in Nigeria, for instance, where we have interfaith relation, where Muslim and non-Muslim come together to discuss issue of national importance and peace between the two different divergent groups. At the same time, other that the Muslims are seeing it as wrong. What I'm trying to point, does Muslim and non-Muslim relationship relate signifies the interpret modalities? Are they the same thing?
Thank you, brother. I actually couldn't get your answer because of there is a slight drop in your voice, but I will try to share my general perception. Yes, this is another sensitive topic, that how an Islamic polity should deal with minorities, that they are different from the value system of Islam, and I would say that. Still we need to it needs lots of deep ijtihad and critical thinking, that we need to bring new ideas and frameworks from rooted in Islamic worldview, how we should how we can incorporate non-Muslims within an Islamic polity, because Islam strongly says that no one should be discriminated. That is one of the Islamic primary principle. And also then Islamic polity is rooted in Islamic worldview. So in itself can partially affect sometimes non-Muslims. But what is important is to strike a balance. How Islamic worldview or Islam, we need to bring our own innovative, creative paradigms to deal with non-Muslims, to incorporate non-Muslims within Islamic framework. So there are some research has been done in the recent past in this aspect. For example, those scholars, those researchers argue that one of the important concepts that we can use in this direction to develop the unity among the different communities in Islamic polity is the concept of Maqasid al-Sharia. So the Maqasid al-Sharia talks about universal values, it talks about principles, it talks about purposes. So that Maqasid is coming from Islamic it is derived from Islamic primary sources, so that has its own Islamic root. Likewise, those values have universal appeal. So that universal appeal, that dimension we can utilize to incorporate non-Muslims within Islamic polity. So non-Muslims will join with Islamic polity from a universal value perspective, and Islamic governance will be based on Islam Maqasid, and it is rooted in Islamic primary sources. So in this way, the Maqasid paradigm has those scholars argue has the potential to strike the balance between Islamic orientation of a state and also the non-Muslims of that state. So that this is I don't say that I don't say this is the ideal, but this is one of the creative thinking in terms of striking a balance between within Muslims and non-Muslims in an Islamic polity. So these researchers, I just recommend participants to read and reflect on. Thank you very much for your questions. I couldn't entertain more because of the time factor, and so we will meet in the next week with another topic, another aspect of discussion. Thank you very much, sister.
Thank you, Doctor. So we will move to the next. The next session is Research Application in SOCA. The next one, the speaker is Dr. Nur Azlin Tajuddin, is an assistant professor at International Islamic University, Malaysia, specializing in environmental sociology. She teaches courses on research methodology, youth and society, and environment and society. Her research interests include quantitative and qualitative research methods, water and solid waste pollution, environmental governance, water-prone development, and climate change issues. She has presented at various conferences and integrated the Save Our Liver project to address liver issues. Her current research engages social learning processes, community participation, and local leadership in improving water quality. So this course provides an in-depth understanding of the methodological foundation of social science research, covering both qualitative and quantitative methods such as surveys, in-depth interviews, and participation observation. It also highlights the importance of empirical findings in investigating social phenomena and the stages of research design, data collection, techniques, and data analysis. So, Doctor, you will have 40 minutes to present your lecture. After the presentation, there will be a 5-minute Q&A session. You can start your lecture speech now. Thank you.
Thank you. My sister, can you see my slide?
Yes, I can see your slide.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. So I would be your last speaker for today. And my topic today is the basic and application of research in sociology. I'm Dr. Azlin, even though the name appear on your screen is Dr. Jusmawati. I'm borrowing her PC. Hold on. Okay, so these are the outline for my topic of discussion today. I will define some of the key terms, and then I will discuss sociology, the interrelationship between our discipline, sociology, research and scientific methods, and foundational research in Islam. And then briefly, we will see a diagram of social research processes, and lastly, application of social research particularly. So as you can see, the word research derived from the two words re and search. Re means you do it over and over again. And search means to examine something thoroughly. So as to present in a very detailed manner and accurate manner about certain phenomena, in our case, social phenomena. So this is basically a literal definition. Next, this is actually a technical definition from Ranjit Kumar. He is one of the leading textbook author in research methodology. So research, academically or technically, can be defined as a noun describing a careful, systematic, patient study and investigation in some field of knowledge undertaken to establish facts and principles. I would flash to you a few definitions. So could you please try to capture a few important keywords in this definition to facilitate our discussion in the next few slides. So personally, I like or love this definition, because apart from defining what is research, this definition has actually given us an idea, at least one characteristic of a good researcher, which is you need to be patient. Because to conduct research, especially say for example like long-term research or longitudinal research, you need patience to investigate, to collect data for a longer period of time. And not to mention, whenever you interview certain of your participants, you might have other challenges as well. So that's why we need patience in order to conduct research. Okay, now I have included the word social research. So this is from American sociologist Balmer. Sociological research as research is primarily committed to establish systematic, reliable and valid knowledge about, of course, social work. So you see the keywords which have been repeated a few times already is systematic. All right. So with that three definition, I want to highlight briefly about relationship of sociology, and for that matter are the social science discipline, with research and scientific methods. So basically these three terms, especially the two terms research and scientific methods, are being used interchangeably in many books, especially on research method, and not to mention as well in the introductory book of many sciences, including social sciences. So for that matter, I would like to flash again definition of sociology, which has been discussed by my friends in week 1, Dr. Aisha. So this is from Diana Kendall in her book, Sociology of Our Time, which is an introductory book to sociology. So systematic study of human society and social interaction, as you can see there, this is the focus of our discipline, which is human society and social interaction. You will see more or less similar definition shared by another main textbook author of sociology, John Marcionis, systematic study of human society. And lastly, Renziati and Tischler, scientific study of human society and social interaction. So in the earlier week 1 and 2, the focus of this definition is on the second part, which is human society and social interaction. But for my topic today, I want you to focus on the first keyword of this definition, which is systematic. Okay, the word systematic being used by Kendall and Marcionis, and scientific being used by Renziati and Tischler. So this is to show that the close interrelationship between the scientific knowledge need to be systematic. Okay, scientific knowledge need to be produced systematically. So that's why these two words are frequently used interchangeably, not only in sociology, but also in many other social science as well as physical sciences discipline. Right, since we have the word science here by Renziati and Tischler, let us briefly define what is science, even though I believe you have come across this definition and even discussion previously. So this is another main textbook author of research method in sociology, W. Lawrence Newman. So what is science? It is both a system for producing knowledge and knowledge produced from the system. So there you go again, you can see the word systematic. So this is one of the most important characteristic of scientific discipline. It must be produced systematically. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, I will highlight few characteristics of science or scientific knowledge. Number one, you must collect empirical evidences. As I think most of you would have known, empirical evidence means those data which have or you will collect using your 5 basic senses. And then another important characteristic of scientific knowledge, we must use specific technique or methods. Okay? If you are physical scientists, you have your own data collection technique. Similarly, for sociologists as well as other social scientists, we would have our own data collection technique, which you will see, I will share with you in the next slide. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the word systematic appears in all definitions just now. So in order to produce scientific knowledge, we must collect our empirical data systematically. After we have collected our data systematically, the output normally we're going to synthesize in the form of theoretical framework. Okay, so theory is another characteristic of scientific knowledge. And this theory and the last characteristic, which is the class characteristic of science that I'm going to share today, is scientific knowledge is cumulative by nature. Because the nature of human society, we undergoes changes across time. So correspondingly, the knowledge produced from our data collection should be able to accommodate to the new changes or new social phenomena that affect our society. So that is cumulative. Right, I want to bring your attention to the father of sociology, which my colleague, Dr. Aisha. So she has mentioned this in her lecture, week 1, Ibn Khaldun as the father of sociology. So this analysis has been done by Fuad Bali in his book, Ibn Khaldun, Sociological Thought. So he has analyzed the masterpiece of Ibn Khaldun work, Muqaddimah, and he found striking similarities of characteristic signs embedded in the work of Ibn Khaldun. Muqaddimah. Number one is empirical. Okay. And then he forwarded a number of sociological generalization. Again, these have been mentioned by my friend, my colleague, on socioecology, a theory on socioecology, a few theories on rural sociology, political sociology, urban sociology, and economic sociology. So these are the 5 chapters that he has elaborated in his masterpiece Muqaddimah. The 6th chapters is actually on scientific knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge. Fuad Bali also mentioned another characteristic of scientific knowledge produced by Ibn Khaldun. Her work is cumulative in nature. Okay, so as you can see, they are similar with the characteristic which I have highlighted earlier. And he also used special data collection technique in the writing of the 6 chapters which I have mentioned earlier. So I will elaborate what are those techniques in the subsequent slide. Okay, I would like to highlight the first characteristic of science or scientific knowledge, which is empirical. So if you go to Quranic verses and hadith, data collection in the form of empirical has been mentioned in numerous Quranic verses, which means to say that conducting research is in line with Islamic teaching. Okay. So there are a lot of Quranic verses. I will merely highlight at least 2. This is in Surah Al-Nahl, okay, whereby Allah has mentioned, He has subjected for you the night and day, and the sun and the moon. The stars are subjected by His command. Indeed, in that they are signs for a people who reason. Even though in this verse, basically Allah highlighted the importance of observing natural phenomena, which is the alternation of day and night. But my point is, Allah mentioned that you need to do your observation. Okay. In this case, natural phenomena. Number 1 in this verse, the alternation day and night, whereby going back to my argument just now, the first characteristic of science to collect data empirically. So one of our basic human senses is your sense of sight. So you can observe, okay, the changes of day and night using your sense of sight. And also the sun and the moon. You can see the sun and the moon with your eyes, the stars during the night. But all of this will make sense to us, okay, if we really take time, okay, to ponder upon this phenomena. So that's why Allah always ended up this type of verse with ya'qilun, or another word, yatafakkarun. So in the context of the research, I also want to highlight these are also another good quality to become an effective researcher. You need to always have this ability to think, to reason, ya'qilun, yatafakkarun. So in the context of sociology, thinking, observing any social phenomena. Okay, another verse also more or less the same. Very important physical or natural phenomena, alternation of day and night, being repeated in many verses. Similarly, in this verse, okay, in this surah, Jasiyah, and in the alternation of night and day, and in what Allah sent down from the sky of provision and give life, thereby to the earth after its lifelessness, and His directing of the wind, a sign of people who reason. Again, even though we live how many years already, depending on your age, on this earth, okay, I'm not sure whether how frequent we have really stopped, okay, ponder and observe all of these natural phenomena. Alternation night and day, again, your sense of sight, and then sky provision, it refers to rainwater, whereby if you want, you can taste the rainwater. In fact, in many countries, this is the main water supply. Okay, we capture rainwater in order to distribute the water to population. So sense of taste. Okay? And then directing of the winds, you have sense of touch. Even though you cannot see the wind with your sense of sight, but definitely you can feel the impact on your skin. So your sense of touch. So at least in this verse, we have 3 different senses. Again, Allah ended up this verse with important attributes being an effective researcher, yaqilun and yatafakkarun, sign for people who reason. Okay, so I'm going to my third topic, foundation of research in Islam. I don't think I would elaborate this at length because the last speaker, Dr. Zacky, and also not to mention in the previous lecture, we have highlighted the importance of Tawhidic paradigm. Okay, so as a Muslim researcher, all of our research effort must be guided by Tawhidic paradigm. As a vicegerent, as a servant of Allah, we need to use our research to promote good, okay, enjoying good, and also to forbid evil. So basically for us as a Muslim researcher, conducting research is a form of ibadah and amana, which also has been highlighted similarly in the last lecture, okay, just now by Dr. Zacky. So in another book by Faridi, I want to emphasize on Tawhidic paradigm just now. So, quote, research should be fired by a mission to please Allah and to serve mankind. So, scientific research in general and social research in particular should not directly or in consequence be harmful to mankind. So, this is how we should operate as a Muslim researcher. Okay, I'm moving quickly to scientific procedures. So this is basically the other characteristic of science, whereby we're going to produce or we're going to collect our data systematically. So in all major textbook or research method and also introductory textbook on social sciences, you would easily find this diagram. Okay. You start with selection of any topic. Okay, depending on your research area. Say, for example, my research area is in environmental sociology, and one of my topic of interest in water pollution. Okay, then we refine further research topic into a research problem. Then we do some literature review, whereby you need to consult other references in relation to your research problem. If you do quantitative research, you're going to formulate hypotheses. Typically, if you do qualitative research, you're going to formulate a few research questions. After this, then you are good to go. This is what we call the implementation stage. You're going to choose research method and visit your field setting or research setting in order to collect your data. Let's say you're going to spend like maybe 6 months in your research setting. You come back to collect data, and next you are ready to analyze the data. So it applies to both quantitative and qualitative research, which I will highlight the differences after this. And the final stage is writing our research report. So whether you are a physical scientist or social scientist, these are the systematic steps that we have to go through in order to complete our empirical research. Okay, so as you can see, my point here to show this diagram is everything needs to be done systematically, one after another. So this is basically for quantitative research. For qualitative research, more or less the same with slight difference. Okay, I will show you another diagram. Again, you see exactly the same stages. This is from another main RM. RM stands for research methods. Textbook author, we have theory in the middle. You can choose your topic, and then you need to narrow down your topic to become very focused, what we call research problem. And then design your study, including choosing your sample, choose your data collection techniques and whatnot. Once you have done that, you can proceed with data collection stage. After you have completed your data collection stage, you need to analyze your data accordingly. Next, you're going to interpret your data. Inform others means you're going to write your research report. And normally after we have written our research report, we easily can transform the research report into maybe documentary, oral presentation, and whatnot. All right, I want to highlight, if you could see, I have put this stage, which is data collection, in pink color compared to the other other research stages. We wouldn't have time to go through all of these stages because in our department, we spend 2 semesters, okay, in order to complete all the stages in conducting research. So I just want to highlight one, which is data collection. Okay, so typically in social sciences, we have two main research paradigm or research approaches, quantitative and qualitative research. So as many of you, I think, are familiar, quantitative research, basically we're going to collect empirical evidences in the form of numbers. So the presentation would be in the form of graph, table, and whatnot. In contrast, if you do qualitative research, we're going to collect any kind of data which are non-numerical in nature. It could be in the form of words, images, audio, visual, and whatnot. Another common difference between these two research approaches, quantitative research normally would be able to accommodate a larger sample size. In contrast, for qualitative research, we would have a smaller sample size. There are many other characteristics or differences between the two research approaches, but as I mentioned just now, we wouldn't have much time to discuss every differences of these two research approaches. So basically in social sciences, as well as definitely sociology, we have our own data collection techniques. Like for sociology and other social scientists, we use survey. So this is very common for us as sociologists. Experiment is commonly used or employed by psychologists. Okay, and then we have secondary analysis. Is basically a survey research, but survey which have been documented. So we have the original researcher and the second or third researcher will use the data, the survey data which have been collected by the original researcher. So this is what we call secondary analysis. Content analysis commonly used by our friends in mass communication department. But of course, other social scientists also would use this data collection technique. Then for qualitative, as I mentioned earlier, is basically empirical data which we have collected in any non-numerical form or format, like words, okay, or visual data. So in sociology, and definitely our twin sister, anthropology, we have participant observation technique, in-depth interview, focus group interview, and document analysis, just to name a few. Okay, I will merely highlight the 3 data collection technique which I have put it in red font. Right, I did mention just now, I would share with you what were the data collection technique used by Ibn Khaldun in his book Muqaddimah, which, as I mentioned just now, been spread into 6 chapters. So again, I'm using the same reference by Fuad Bali. So in this book, you will find that Fuad Bali has identified at least there were 3 data collection techniques used by Ibn Khaldun, which were 1, observation, and then historical method and comparative method. Even though he did not really specify the step, but the essence as we understood in the modern science research method, these were the 3 data collection technique employed by Ibn Khaldun. So meaning to say, collection of empirical data is not so alien in our tradition. It has been used by even the father of sociology, which is Ibn Khaldun, in his book Muqaddimah. Okay, so I'm coming to the last section or subtopic of my presentation, which is the application of research. So basically, sociologists and other social research, we basically conducted research in order to understand some of these factors like cultural, political, religious, psychological, and economic factors that could influence either individual behavior. If you are psychologists, if you are sociologists, we want to understand social behavior, social interaction, social structure, social institution. So for us, by conducting research, and we can better understand factors which I have listed just now, so that we can offer more effective intervention, policy or evaluation in relation to the social phenomena that we wish to study. So that is the importance of collecting empirical data, so that we can offer any intervention program, or we can improvise the previous program, or we can suggest a new policy, or we can improvise the previous policy in for the betterment of mankind, okay, for our society. Okay, with that, I want to give a specific example using the data collection technique which I have listed just now. Okay. Like survey research. As I mentioned earlier, this is commonly used by sociologists. Not only by sociologists, this is also the most popular data collection technique by many social scientists, like political scientists, okay, psychologists, and so on. I'm sure many of you have participated in a survey research. Okay? So this is one example of survey research. Normally, we ask your demographic background, okay? Like your age, gender, race, educational background, and whatnot. Okay? So this is one example, what we call employee satisfaction survey. Currently, many of the surveys have been transformed into digital format. Okay? So you easily can participate in any online survey, whereby the link to the online survey definitely has been shared to you. So this is the technical definition of survey research. A survey is a method of obtaining large amount of data. As I mentioned just now, this is quantitative research. So normally we can easily accommodate few hundreds respondents. In fact, in some research, if you have a high amount of funding, you can even interview up to 1,000 respondents. So the main characteristic of survey research is the use of questionnaire. Okay. As you can see on the screen now, this is example of questionnaire. Usually, the data collected using questionnaire would be in a statistical form from a large number of people in a relatively short period of time. As I mentioned just now, we can get, especially nowadays, online survey, we can get like 1,000 respondents easily in a shorter period of time. So the main characteristic of survey research is the use of questionnaire. And the main characteristic of questionnaire are basically, you're going to find what we call closed-ended question. Closed-ended question is just like MCQ question in the final exam. You have the answer given to you. So you need to choose the best answer that fit your attributes or characteristic. Like this one, everything has been decided or being predetermined. The answer has been predetermined to you. Your job is just simply to tick which is the best, okay, that fit you. Right, research application. As I mentioned just now, I want to share with you a few examples which relate to us as a Muslim. So as simple as we need to have a survey to know the status of religious practices among the Muslim. As basic as, do you pray 5 times a day? So this is an example of one question in a questionnaire using survey research. This is a makeup data. Okay? It doesn't reflect any society or any country, so not to worry. So just imagine if you conduct this survey. Okay, I want to show you the important and the application, the practical application of survey research. So just imagine this particular society or village or suburb or town or country, the number of respondents who have answered, 10% have performed their daily prayers, 5-time daily prayers. 65% mention only occasionally. And 25% mention hardly. Okay, so it should be an alarm, okay, red flag to us, okay, as a Muslim society, because this is so basic. But yet only 10% of the Muslim, okay, of X or Y or Z city has performed the daily prayer, the 5 daily prayer. So that's why we as Muslim scholar, Muslim researcher have the obligation, okay, responsibility and amana to collect basic data such as this in order to move forward, in order, as I mentioned just now, to please Allah, okay, to be an effective vicegerent and whatnot. So this kind of statistic should be, of course, conveyed to our da'i. It has a direct implication to da'wah practices. So after how many centuries and with the advance of technology, we have online classes nowadays, okay, online religious talk. You can basically at any time of the day can tune to YouTube, okay, or Instagram or TikTok, not to mention the traditional way of acquiring knowledge by attending talks in the mosque. But yet we have only 10% of our Muslim perform 5 times basic prayer. So this kind of information should be fed to our da'i, I mean to reflect whether, as I mentioned earlier, the strategy, the intervention, the way we deliver our talks, our tazkirah and whatnot, are they effective enough to reach our audience, and also more importantly to change their behavior in order for them to become a better vicegerent, okay, a better hamba Allah, because this is so basic to us. Alright, next, participant observation. This is a qualitative research, very unique to anthropology especially, and also being used by sociologists. So if you want to conduct a participant observation, you must be there in the group that you wish to study, the local group that you wish to study, the villages. Say for example, if you are thinking to study university population, then you must be in the research location, which is the university, and mingle around with the university community. So you must be there for an extended period of time. What are you going to do there? Observing behavior, listening to what is said in conversation, both between others and with you as a researcher or field worker. And if possible, you ask questions if anything you do not understand with the social activities or social behavior interaction that you have observed. So this is a qualitative research. These pictures basically were my own research when I did my PhD thesis on river pollution. I have 2 research settings, okay, the Klang River and also the Torrens River. So as you can see there, not only you need to observe the behavior of the participant, but also in some situation, we need to participate in the activities of the local people in order to gain better understanding, in order to collect the data empirically. So these were some of the activities that I have joined. Okay, I have visited the trash rack together with an officer from Department of Irrigation and Drainage, okay, in order to better understand the issue of river pollution at the Klang River catchment. I also have participated in the river monitoring activities, okay, of the Klang River catchment. And as I mentioned just now, my research is cross-national study in nature. I also conducted participant observation at the Torrens River catchment in Adelaide, So this was me together with my participant and interviewees. As I mentioned just now, one of the characteristics of using participant observation, you should participate in the routine activities of the local people. So here I've been working together with one of my participants. So when we participated in these activities, it's just not merely for the sake of participating. We're going to collect data. We ask questions informally. We observe and jotted down what we call field notes, which later we're going to analyze. Alright, so this is basically a direct application. Our doctor just now mentioned about Maqasid Syariah. So this is one aspect of Maqasid Syariah, to protect our Mother Earth. Okay, which personally I think one of the least topic being addressed by our Muslim scholar. Protection of nature, okay, towards sustainable future or sustainable environment. So you can use research technique in order to better understand how the Muslim interacted with nature, which of course has been created by Allah the Mighty. Do we really act as the steward of nature, okay, to protect these natural resources? Okay, another example. Okay. You can also conduct participant observation. You become the participant. At the same time, you observe the behavior of the Muslim or also non-Muslim in regard to the Palestinian-Israel conflict issue. Okay, so I have joined a few demo in KL. So you can see here from the river to the sea. So to what extent we support our brothers in Palestine? Of course, there are many forms of participation or support that we can give. Or as a participant observer, you can simply observe this outlet. Does the Muslim join this boycott campaign in McDonald's? So you can conduct participant observation at Starbucks. Okay, or you visited a few groceries and see what kind of product being consumed by the Muslim society. Okay, and then typically for participant observer, we're going to jot down our field notes. So we can, of course, administer a survey, but sometimes we can also do what we call triangulation to add to the survey data. We do our participant observation. To what extent we provide support to our Muslim brothers. So this is another way how we can use research in a practical, applied setting in this kind of issues. Right, another one is in-depth interview. Also another data collection technique I use for my PhD. This is the title of my PhD. Place, People and Pollution and Urban Ethnography of the Klang River in Kuala Lumpur and the Torrens River in Adelaide. So what is in-depth interview? It is basically an interaction or conversation between you as a researcher or interviewer with your participant. Sometimes we call our participant as interviewee or member, in which the interviewer has a general plan of inquiry, but not a specific or rigid set of questions that must be asked with particular words in a particular order. So it is being conducted in very relaxed manner. Okay, it's just like a typical day-to-day conversation. But as a researcher, you have an objective in mind to collect data, even though you do it in very relaxed manner or in very informal manner. But we do have our mission in order to conduct our research, in order to answer our research questions. So this is some of my interview session. One, I have conducted my interview session even in a boat, during a boat cruise with a boat operator at the Torrens River. Another one, a picture of me with one of the local residents, which have basically built his house along the Klang River in Taman Melawati, just nearby our campus. Okay, this is another example. Just now, my own personal research. This is a published article. So you can see that the title, this is published in the Journal of Sociology of Religion. So, becoming Muslim, the development of a religious identity. Okay, you can see, I'm not sure whether you can see the names of the author, Lori Peck. She's an American sociologist. Okay, so it is better to have as well, apart from these American sociologists, to have a Muslim sociologist as well to conduct a research about the Muslim in the US. What are the issues we need to know? Okay, so development of religious identity. I have highlighted the main data collection technique used by this researcher. She has used participant observation, focus group interview, and individual interview. So in my example for this slide is individual, or what we call in-depth interview. Right, so this is how we can use research in order to strengthen, in this case, the practicing Muslim of our brothers and sisters in the US. This is another good example of our own student. He is currently collecting his data. He already presented the proposal last semester. The Productive Welfare Discourse of Zakat Institution in Malaysia, the Sociology of Knowledge Approach to Discourse. So he is planning to interview 10 custodians of Zakat program in Malaysia and also 20 participants of Zakat recipient in Malaysia, particularly in Selangor and wilayah persekutuan. So this type of topic which have an impact to us as Muslim society, we do not expect the non-Muslim scholar to do the research for us. As you know, this research are extremely important. They are all the pillars of Islam, just to give you a few examples. So definitely we need the Muslim sociologists to come forward and to conduct their empirical research in order to better understand what are the challenges of both, in this case, Zakat institution and also the Zakat recipient. Okay? So that we can come up with better policy to address like poverty issues in relation to Zakat. This is basically finding our research, again being conducted by non-Muslim sociologists. It is a longitudinal research, so that's why, as I mentioned earlier, you need a patient. Okay, can you imagine you spend more than 10 years to conduct the study? So in research, we call this longitudinal research, whereby we're going to collect data more than one time. Time 1, time 2, time 3, time 4, and so on. So it has been reported in Lebanon, about 43% admitted they do not practice Islam in their private life. And not to mention, certain percentages, about 23, have deconverted. I mean, have left our religion. Okay. So this is again another example on the importance for us to collect empirical evidence. At the ground level, what are actually happening to our society. Okay. Ideally, okay, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the guideline to be a practicing Muslim, to pay zakat, to perform prayers. But do our brothers and sisters perform these basic pillars of Islam, being a Muslim? Okay. And for the last research, is even heartening to know that some of our brothers and sisters have left our religion. And not to mention those who are not practicing Islam fully. So basically, the application of research, for my understanding, is actually to narrow the gap between the revealed knowledge, what have been stated in the Quran and Sunnah. So as Muslim social scientists and sociologists, we want to know what happened on the ground in the reality. We want to know how large is the gap. Okay, we have the idea, of course, all of us need to follow the Quran and Sunnah, the commandments. But what happened on the ground? So that is our responsibility. Is it this narrow or even very large gap? as mentioned by the statistic just now, or even larger than that. So this would be my last slide for us to ponder, and also a kind of motivation for us as a Muslim scholar, Muslim researcher, to conduct research in regard to the issues that affect our society, not only the well-being of our Muslim society, but also most importantly, fundamentally, our identity as a Muslim. Do we really practice Islamic teaching? With that, I thank you for your time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Doctor. Now let's have a Q&A session. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat or raise hand, please. Oh, Doctor, you have questions in the meeting chat?
Hello? Hello?
Okay.
Mouse.
Anyone who have question, you can raise up your hand so that I can unmute you.
Yeah, equally. One question, what about the Muslim in Palestine? Yes, if we want, we will have the courage. We can even conduct not only how the other Muslim perceive the Palestine, but also we can go to the refugee camp, like in Lebanon, in Syria. If definitely we cannot enter Palestine at the moment, but the neighboring countries, or even the Palestine in Malaysia. So we can interview them. Maybe one of the interesting question that we can answer using empirical research, how do they manage to stay put for many decades? Okay, their faith, okay, their dedication, not to mention their courage to fight against the Israel for many decades. So maybe we can learn a lot from them. Not maybe. Definitely we would be able to learn a lot from them. How would they socialize their children? Even in the midst of the war, at least based on what I have seen in the YouTube, okay, and also FB, TikTok and whatnot, how they manage to socialize their children to be Hafiz and Hafizah, despite all of this situation, in contrast to us, which enjoy a lot of benefit, okay, in a peace, a loving country and whatnot. So maybe we need to do both participant observation, in-depth interview with both parents as well as the children. The good parenting skill that they have. Okay, what about the da'wah that they have done? Up to the extent that, as you know, there are many shuhada. As I speak now, I don't know, 50,000, at least since October last year up to now. And not to mention the latest news, right? Pada Yahya Sinwar. So how would they able to do with, despite all the tension, stress, conflict, depression that they might suffer and whatnot? Okay, so that would be my quick response. To you, anything else?
Brother Rashid, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I thank you, Doctor, so much. Really, I joined a little bit late because of not getting so conversant with the timing. However, I almost shed tears when you were concluding your lecture, particularly about Palestine, where our brothers are really suffering so much, and how I wish we could come with something formidable in terms of how these brothers can be helped in terms of contributions in money form, and how this can reach to our people there, because some of the news that we get really are so touching.
Yeah.
We see people really are suffering now. How can we reach them in terms of maybe little contributions if it is there? I am talking from Uganda right now. That is one area. Then the second area maybe a little bit outside. How can one get access to studies in Malaysia, being a Muslim country? I feel it is important also if there could be some access or ways of reaching Malaysia, so that one could also enrich his Islamic knowledge there easily. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, I wouldn't be able to answer what would be the best strategy for us to help them, but actually I have like signposted one of the way that we can effectively, apart from prayers, of course, and apart from sending some financial contribution to them directly, there are a lot of NGOs which provide platform and opportunity for us to give our sedekah to them. So apart from these two, I have actually indirectly suggesting another important mechanism, which is to boycott Israel product. Again, if you conduct research, you will be surprised. I mean, I have not conducted empirical research, just merely by my daily observation of certain FB posts or TikToker posts. You would be surprised. Some of our Muslim brothers and sisters are heavily opposed boycott. That's one of the important mechanisms to also help our brothers and sisters. I'm sure you have read a lot of articles on how this, by purchasing this product from Israel company, they can directly, they have basically use the money, the profit, in order to support the arms, the buying of the drones and whatnot, to conduct research so that they come with the most sophisticated military and whatnot. So how would we as a Muslim have the heart actually to keep purchasing and not to join the boycott or sanction? That is my personal opinion. So if we want to conduct the research, it can be also, which I have not highlighted here, content analysis of the TikToker or the social influencer. Okay, content analysis, which can be jointly conducted by sociologists and those in mass communication. Okay, we study the themes narrated by this social influencer in their TikTok posts as well as FB posts. You would be surprised. Okay, at least based on my observation, it's not really scientific, but merely personal observation. Highly resistant. I mean, some of them over time have less empathy towards the plight of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. So we need to have data as well. Okay, empirical data to show the tendency of our Muslim society towards these Palestinian issues. Okay, so that would be my short response to your question. I hope it answers your query, brother. I think I saw one question just now. Okay, how Islamic sociology can be differentiated from sociology of Islam in regard to the methods? Right. Indirectly, I have mentioned in my slide presentation, I mean, how we can be differ is in terms of our foundation just now. I mean, as Muslim scholar, definitely we don't want to conduct study which is against Islamic teaching and principle. Like we conduct study on LGBT, like many Western sociologists, okay, non-Muslim scholar, basically they conduct a study on LGBT. In a way, they try to support the right of these LGBT practitioners to have their own sexual orientation being validated. So for me, the most important differentiation is the foundation of why we conduct research, which I have highlighted earlier. For us, definitely to please Allah and to promote good conduct, and also to forbid evil conduct like the practice of LGBT, lesbian and whatnot. In terms of research technique, also indirectly I have mentioned just now, especially I'm using the work by the father of sociology himself, Ibn Khaldun, whereby he basically used the data collection technique which we use in the current modern context, like historical comparative, observation, except he did not use survey. But personally, I think it's no harm for us to use this data collection technique. If you do, perhaps if we do historical research, this data collection technique were originally rooted in Islamic tradition. But then the European scholar or Western scholar have adopted and refined the data collection technique and claim that this is theirs. Okay, just like many other Muslim invention. So for me personally, no harm, okay, to use data collection technique which used empirical data as evidences. Okay, as I have highlighted in few Quranic verses just now, we are being encouraged strongly to do observation, to collect empirical evidences. So we can continue to collect empirical evidences using a so-called survey, as we know in the current context, observation, which I argue was already there in our Islamic historical tradition. Historical comparative was already there, and now we continue to do it, and maybe has been rebranding as belonging to Western tradition. Okay? I hope that answered the question.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sister Anju, our moderator. Yes.
I think the time is out, so we will wrap up today's session. I'd like to thank the lecturers who participate and the audience for their interest and attention. Inshallah, see you next week. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.